Okay, we're going to go back on the record.
Okay, let me open the record in the second petition today, and that is the petition for, and I think it's for early termination probation. Is that right?
That's right.
Of Teresa Jean Lauer. This is agency case number 2002-0150018888. My name is Carl Engelman, Administrative Law Judge assigned to sit with the board. And for the record, all of the board members who were previously, or who attended the previous matter are present, except for Dr. Peter Chu. All right, and Ms. Weberheim, would you state your appearance for the record, please?
Thank you. Good morning. Deputy Attorney General Patricia Weberheim, appearing on behalf of the people of the state of California pursuant to Government Code Section 11522.
Thank you. And Ms. Lauer, I asked you to review the documents contained in the binder, which is typically presented by the Deputy Attorney General. Have you had a chance to do that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you understand, ma'am, that had you wished and at your own expense, you could have been represented by an attorney in these proceedings?
Yes.
Okay, but you've chosen for whatever reason to represent yourself, correct?
Right.
Okay. All right. Proceed.
Thank you. I would first like to mark for identification and offer into evidence the original petition packet, which has been divided up into exhibits in the binder. This packet has been provided to the board members. The petitioner has also been provided a copy, as well as the administrative law judge. Exhibit 1, pre-marked as Exhibit 1, is the petition for early termination of probation, with attachments including character letters and transcripts, and it's dated November 23rd, 2018. Pre-marked as Exhibit 2 is the stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which was effective December 1st of 2016, and it includes the attached accusation number 200-2015-001888, dated May 23rd, 2016. Pre-marked as Exhibit 3 and requested to be accepted under protective order and filed so that the documents are sealed to protect the petitioner's right to privacy is petitioner's psychological evaluation. Also requested to be filed under seal as pre-marked Exhibit 4, which is petitioner's psychotherapy quarterly reports. Pre-marked as Exhibit 5 is the notification of this hearing to petitioner, and pre-marked as Exhibit 6 is the certification of petitioner's licensure history.
Okay.
At this time, I would
Sorry.
offer Exhibits 1 through 6 into evidence, with Exhibits 3 and 4 filed under seal.
Okay. Ms. Lauer, having reviewed those documents, any objection to my receiving any of them into evidence? Any objection to my sealing 3 and 4 for review only by the board and reviewing courts? Okay? So those, can you,
No.
no and no, right?
No and no.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'll sit closer for you.
Thank you. All right, the exhibits are received. 3 and 4 will be sealed. Please continue.
Thank you. At this time, I will read a summary of the petitioner's matter. Petitioner was issued licensed marriage and family therapist, license number LMFT 47862, on or about November 23rd, 2009, and said license was in full force and effect at all times relevant to the charges brought against her. On or about May 13th, 2015, petitioner collided with another vehicle while driving and drove away from the scene. Shortly thereafter, she was pulled over and arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol with a blood alcohol content of 0.17%. Petitioner was convicted of a DUI with a blood alcohol content of over 0.08% on July 23, 2015. In addition, she failed to report the conviction to the board within 30 days. An accusation was filed on May 23, 2016, and the board adopted a stipulated settlement and disciplinary order, which immediately revoked, stayed and placed the petitioner on probation for 4 years with optional and standard terms and conditions effective December 1st, 2016. Petitioner is requesting early termination of probation and is not represented by an attorney. Regarding the terms and conditions of probation, petitioner completed the psychological evaluation on March 27th, 2017. She's in compliance with submitting her psychotherapy quarterly reports. She completed a relapse prevention program on February 23rd, 2018. She completed remedial education on May 18th, 2018. She's in compliance with biological fluid testing, and regarding her cost recovery, she's in compliance with the payment plan and will need to pay the remaining balance if early termination is granted. She is fully in compliance with standard terms and conditions, including submitting quarterly reports and providing reimbursement costs for the probation program. I will reserve questioning until after the petitioner makes a statement, if she so chooses.
Okay, thank you very much. I have in front of me a document that reflects total BBS probation costs. Is that something you wish to offer in addition to the supporting documents?
Yes, please.
Okay, have you taken a look at this?
Yes.
All right, any objection?
No, no objection.
Okay, and do board members, so I guess they all have a copy of this. Okay, so that'll be 7 in evidence. Okay, Ms. Lauer, I presume you wish to address the board this morning, correct?
Yes, please.
Would you stand, please, and raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that any testimony you should give in this proceeding shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. And would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Teresa Lauer.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you all so much for your service protecting the citizens of California. I know it's a difficult job and that you're not paid. I sit on many boards as a volunteer, and I understand your hard work, and I really appreciate it. I also appreciate being given a second chance after relapsing and drinking again and driving under the influence. I really appreciate that I've been able to practice as a therapist. I have complied with everything, and I definitely acknowledge that I am an alcoholic. I think I'll just try to read. I'm more nervous than I thought I'd be. I'm sorry. I'm shaking. Okay.
You weren't here yesterday, but let me caution you in the manner that I cautioned people who read a statement yesterday. As I said to them, my experience, and this is universally true, is everybody who reads something speeds up.
Okay.
So read at a pace at which you think is ridiculously slow, but it'll be normal.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think I'll just refer to these, but maybe not read. So I'm a crier, and this is a very painful experience in my life, so I most likely will cry, and I'm okay with that if you're okay with that. Okay. So I was very, very fortunate that at the age of 25 days after my 20th birthday, I went to AA on December 27th, 1988, and acknowledged that I was an alcoholic and maintained continuous sobriety and active involvement in Alcoholics Anonymous for 23 years. I was diagnosed with cancer. In 2005, and although the treatment killed the cancer, I was left with debilitating health conditions that were difficult to diagnose. And I continued trying to work and finally was unable to work, I think around 2007. And I was put on state disability for a year and tried to go back to work, was unable to work. And over the next, I think 4 years, Social Security continued denying my claims, even with letters from doctors and seeing all their doctors jumping through all their hoops. So what ended up happening is that at a very young age, as a single mother, I was left incapacitated and with no income. And so I lost my house and my car, along with my health and my ability to work, and was very, very ill and was not getting much help. as much as doctors tried to help me, I went through a lot of tests. It was just hard to identify what was happening with me. So as a result of losing all of that, my younger brother came to Santa Cruz and moved myself and my son to Portland, where he lived, and rented us an apartment there, and offered to take care of all of my bills, which was incredibly generous. Up until that time, I did not have a lot of contact with my family. I love them very much, but they're all practicing their own addictions, and I attend Al-Anon to deal with that. So I was back around my siblings, and I think sometime in February, after my brother had rented me the apartment, I thought for sure this time I was going to get Social Security, and I got a letter on February 7th that I was denied again. So no income. I was very, very sick. I didn't have any hope of getting better, and I remember thinking as I looked at that letter, if 23 years of sobriety has gotten me here, I'm just going to drink again. And what I now know is that because I was so fortunate to stay sober all those years, I had never tried to quit drinking. So as much as it seems like I have a degree, I studied addictions, I specialized in addiction treatment, I was sober 23 years, I did not understand the nature of alcoholism, and I'm embarrassed to say that. And unfortunately, it took this for me to get that understanding. I certainly have it now. So yeah, I thought to myself, I'm just going to drink, and if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to AA. All my friends are in AA, everybody's in AA, I'll just go back if it doesn't work out. What I didn't understand was the denial associated with alcoholism. And once I started drinking, I just thought, I'm not an alcoholic. And I remember friends saying to me, we knew you were a fake alcoholic all these years. So all of a sudden, I think the way alcoholism works in the brain, AA people weren't interesting to me anymore. Although I continued to say the 3rd step and the 7th step prayer on a daily basis, which I find kind of hilarious, I didn't connect with AA in Portland. I didn't get a sponsor up there. I didn't do any of that. And so I drank sporadically and continued to lose everything. My life was miserable anyway, but it got more miserable. And for me, drinking Chardonnay starting at 5 o'clock, I would watch the clock tick and start at 5 o'clock, and that was the way I relieved my anxiety from being so sick and having financial worries and all of it. Obviously, it didn't help. Here I am. So I thought I could control it, I could quit when I wanted, all of that stuff that happens when you think you're not an alcoholic. And on the day that I got my DUI, I never ever thought I would get a DUI. I never thought I would drink to excess. And I took my car in for an oil change. My son met me there. I took him to his college class and told him I'd be back in an hour and a half. And I was going to a Mexican restaurant to eat lunch. And I got there and I drank a margarita, which is called a Molly margarita. Anyway, a friend of mine said, you took Molly and drank a margarita? No, I didn't. Anyway, so it turns out it had 5 shots in it. And so what happened is that I drank that, and then I didn't eat, and I drank another one. And I left the restaurant in a blackout. And what I know now, understanding my own alcoholism, is that once the alcohol's in my system, I crave more, and I don't feel as drunk as I am. So I have 0 memory of leaving that restaurant. 2 weeks later, I got the police report and was horrified that I had hit another car and that there were witness statements. I mean, it was horrific, to be honest. And when I came to is when the officers pulled me over. Going to jail was the most horrifying experience. And I remember thinking, I think Elizabeth Vargas, somebody I had seen on 2020 talking about that she was an alcoholic and she was doing okay. And I just kept saying that to myself. You can be an alcoholic and you can do okay like Elizabeth Vargas. So I'm grateful for the people who do blow their anonymity in public because it actually really helped me that night. What do I want to tell you? So I went right back to AA. And I did have a slip, unfortunately, so my sobriety date is September 4th, 2015. I have maintained continuous sobriety. I started working with the sponsor, Mary Rodriguez, that I continue to work with today. She's my last person I talked to last night and the first person I talked to this morning. Treating my alcoholism is number one for me, and I'm very, very fortunate and blessed to have an incredible Buddhist practice and an incredible Buddhist teacher. But as my son will say, when I lived in Portland, my teacher is there, and he hosted the Dalai Lama to come. So my son likes to say, the Dalai Lama couldn't get you sober, but AA could. So for me, the combination of the two is really, really important. AA meetings and continually acknowledging my alcoholism, I will have to do and will do for the rest of my life, because I know absolutely that if I put alcohol in my body, again, I will think I'm not an alcoholic, and who knows? I mean, this DUI is like, I'm unbelievably fortunate that I'm not sitting in prison. Am I talking too fast? Is this okay? Okay. All right. Yes, so by the time this probation started, that was December 1st of 2017, I had already been maintaining sobriety. I have completed everything that's been asked. Very happy, actually, to have been on this probation. And I love working with my therapist every week. And although I know that's what I should do, I can say honestly that I probably wouldn't have done it. I will continue to do it now. The graduate school that I went to actually required us to do 48 sessions in 1 year with a licensed therapist of their choosing, or we had to start over. So they were very committed to us doing our own inner work in order to help others. My therapist is a Zen Buddhist priest, and she's amazing, and I would not have found her if it had not been for this probation. As you can see, I'm asking for early termination, mostly because I feel that I don't need the probation in order to maintain my sobriety. I go to AA meetings regularly. I meet with my sponsor. I have many things to maintain sobriety. Because I must maintain sobriety, I will lose everything. And the cost is very, very stressful, as well as you would think, oh, you're clean and sober, it's no big deal to get tested, except that they found creatines, I don't even know what those are, in my urine twice. So my testing was supposed to get reduced last year, and it didn't get reduced because of that. And now, if my urine is diluted or there's creatines, I'm charged an extra $75 on top of the $110 that I already pay for every test. So it's quite stressful, actually. But to be perfectly honest, I think if somebody is going to be practicing as a therapist in California, your only way of knowing if they're safe to practice is to give them wraparound services, which I feel like you gave me. I was covered on every front. Okay, I think I'll stop talking and let you guys ask your questions.
Okay, Ms. Heim, questions?
Thank you. I apologize if I'm not looking directly at you. I'm trying to make sure I make the record.
Okay.
So in the stipulated settlement, you were ordered to reimburse the board for $975 in costs. Have you done this?
I've made a monthly payment, and I would be happy to reimburse the rest of that.
Do you have a plan for this for if your termination is granted early or your
I will
probation
I pay it in one payment.
Thank you. Do you have any other criminal convictions that this board is unaware of?
No.
Are there any current criminal or civil charges pending in this state or any other jurisdiction?
No.
You were convicted of an offense involving alcohol and motor vehicles. Now, I believe you've partially answered this in your statement, but are there any other assurances you would like to give the board that your past conduct is behind you?
I know without a doubt that I'm an alcoholic, and that treating my alcoholism is my first priority every day.
In your petition, you mentioned that you did not notify the board when you received your conviction, but did they contact you regarding the failure to report the conviction?
I got a letter from the BBS, yes, that they had been notified due to my fingerprinting, I think, when I was booked.
And so when they contacted you, did you immediately accept responsibility?
Immediately.
Thank you. And you said your sobriety date was September 14th. I'm sorry, I missed.
September 4th,
4th. Of what year?
2015.
Okay, thank you. And you have a sponsor who's a Zen Buddhist priest.
That's my therapist. Is
Your
a Zen
therapist.
Buddhist priest.
Excuse me, your sponsor. Tell me about your sponsor.
My sponsors, I'm aware this is all public. Anyway, I'm sorry I said her name, Mary. Tell you about her. She's an incredible woman. She's been sober 30 years. I think actually she just celebrated 31 years. She's very involved in adult children of alcoholics, Alcoholics Anonymous, OA, and I think that's it. Anyway, she's a wonderful woman, and when I first started working with her, I called her every single day. I went to meetings every day. I had 4 commitments at meetings. I worked the steps with her, 1 step a month, and I now sponsor 2 women and continue to work with her.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mary.
When did you complete your criminal probation?
Gosh, that's a good question. Let's see, 3 years. So July 2016.
So if you're granted early termination of your probation, will you continue to attend personal therapy?
Absolutely.
Are there any other rehabilitative or corrective measures you've taken that you would like to tell the board about since your revocation?
I completed the DUI classes. Unfortunately, they weren't very helpful, but that's okay. I found a therapist there, though, she runs a group for women in early recovery, and she also is a mindfulness teacher. So she and I really hit it off, and I attended that women's mindfulness and recovery group weekly for several years, and I still go sporadically, maybe once a month.
So going forward, what are your goals for yourself as a licensed marriage and family therapist?
My goals are to continue to treat myself first so that I can be available to my clients and continue to work. Hopefully my health will continue to improve and I'll be able to work even more.
Thank you. So my final question is there anything that you want to say specifically to the board to assure them that you will continue to maintain your sobriety if you're granted early termination of your probation?
Yeah, I maintained my sobriety for over a year until the probation began. I have continued to maintain it in spite of many stressors, and I plan to stay sober for the remainder of my life, as well as I maintain 23 years of continuous sobriety by building a strong support system around myself, and I intend to continue that for the rest of my life.
Thank you. I will turn it over to the board.
Okay, starting to my right this time. Questions by board members?
Thank you, Ms. Lauer.
You're welcome.
You mentioned about the many different ways to maintain your sobriety. So besides the AA meetings, you mentioned about your faith or faith-based techniques, Buddhism.
Yeah.
What type of coping mechanisms are you using?
In terms of my Buddhist practice, yeah. So my Buddhist practice every morning, I get up, I do a water bowl or an offering practice, and I sit in meditation and watch my thoughts. I sit on the board of 2 retreats, and I help to run those during the summer. And then I've also recently started a program with a friend doing Buddhist practice and art for emotional healing.
Thank you.
I'm so much more nervous than I thought. Did I answer your question?
So you activated my phone.
Oh,
No, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
You did good.
I also attend several retreats a year, Buddhist retreats with teachers.
I see. No further questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So I noticed that, you did not provide the information for your employment. So what is your current job? Or, or maybe explain a little bit about your job history
Yeah.
since your conviction.
Yeah. Oh, since my conviction.
I think this is the questions in the, let's see. Yes, since
Yeah.
the discipline.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
A couple
yeah.
of years ago?
Yeah, so I think it says that I was licensed in 2009. It was actually, I didn't practice. So I think I took the exams and got my license, and then I wasn't practicing because I was too ill. I moved to Oregon. I moved back to California in 2012, the end of 2012. And my friend, Karina Saltzman, she actually has a contract to refer clients who go to the university at Santa Cruz. And so she refers them to me, and I am an independent contractor. And I see as many clients as my health allows, not very many at this point.
So how long have you been the independent contractor?
I started right then. I think I renewed my license in November or December, maybe, of 2012. So since then.
So it's about 6 years, a little bit longer than 6
A
years?
little bit longer than 6 years, yes. And so I see all university students and very few.
Okay. So, okay, that sounds good. So do you have your private office?
I do.
Okay, so so you're independent contractors, but you're not on private practice? Or are you,
I am in private
consider-
practice.
So you consider yourself in private practice?
I am in private practice, yes.
Okay. So, and then the other, so when you have completed your psychological evaluation,
Yes.
did you by chance get a report?
I was not allowed to read that report.
Oh, okay. So you're not, so are you aware that one of the recommendations from the psych eval is for you to do supervised practice?
Yes, I was aware of that.
So, have you done that?
I have done that.
Okay, so, tell me a little bit about, the supervised practice and, what, the focus and, what you gain from it?
Sure, yeah.
And who's your private practice person?
Supervisor?
The supervisor? Yeah.
My supervisor
Sorry.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, so his name is Donald Saldine, and he's a really amazing therapist. And so I saw him twice a week in the beginning, or twice a month, sorry, not twice a week, twice a month in the beginning, and now I see him once a month. I tape one of my sessions, and we review the session and talk about ways that I can improve working with clients.
Okay. All right. That's all the question I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Just to follow up on that, so are you still mandated at once a month to do the supervision then?
That's right.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Have you changed in the last 2 years?
Have I changed?
So you've been doing these probationary terms. I
Mm.
know you started some of these pieces before you were on probation. but Tell me if at all you've changed, and if so, how in the last couple years?
I mean, I pretty much have just kept the same routine to maintain sobriety. My life is very simple and slow. I think living with chronic illness, as much as I never wanted it to happen, it has afforded me that I have to place self-care as my priority. And so very simple life. I do very little. I work very little, and I've learned to be happy with very little. And my Buddhist practice, I think my Buddhist practice has probably really flourished in the last couple of years. Developing a program to bring to the public has been really wonderful and powerful, and working with a few people who are leaders in the field has been wonderful for me. I really enjoy that. And this last August, we led a 3-day retreat, which was really well received and wonderful to do, and I hope to do more of that.
Okay, thank you. I want to respect your privacy with whatever your health issues are, but I think maybe the best way to ask is, how is it that you're able to manage those health issues now? I mean, it sounds like you're slowing down your life, and I don't know if there's pain involved, and so if there's pain involved, how do you manage that?
Yeah. So I have a few wonderful doctors that I work with who, continually monitor me. and my pain is managed with Tylenol and lots of rest, and I can never lift more than 10 pounds. And how do I manage my illness? I think that's it. I just had to stop doing a lot of what I used to do.
Okay. And then my last question is, God forbid if something really horrible happened again and you were faced with something so traumatic like you were before, what would be different this time? Not just in terms of, at least now you know you can't drink, but what else is different about who you are?
Oh, you mean like if I were to lose everything and have to be moved to Portland? Yeah. I would immediately reach out to the AA community and get a sponsor in that area and attend at least one meeting a day. That's what I would do differently.
And would you move back with your family who struggles with addiction?
No, they're in Texas. No, that would never happen again. I mean, I appreciate they really rescued me, but wasn't good for me.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for coming in, and I have no questions.
Oh, no, sorry, I was distracted, I apologize. No, no further questions, thank you.
I have no questions.
We need to go off the record. Okay? And a question has been posed to me by one or more board members, which I think requires us to discuss it in private. Yes. I hope it's only a few minutes.
So with that, the board will move to closed session. Please, if you could just wait outside the room for a few minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Let's go back on the record. All right, let's continue with board questions.
I don't have any further questions. so
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, but I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you tell me a little bit about what your plan is when life happens, when some sort of maybe overwhelming circumstance occurs in your life? Like, what's your plan to continue your sobriety should that happen?
Yeah. So maintaining meetings. When things get stressful for me, I had a flare-up with my condition a couple of months ago. I go to 2 or 3 meetings a day, to be honest, when that happens. There's a beautiful meeting in Santa Cruz that includes a half hour of silent meditation. So that's 7 days a week, and I participate as much as I can. I have a very close relationship with my sponsor, and she's proven to be unbelievable support for me and my therapist. My son is, see, if I talk about him, I start crying. So he's incredible support to me as well. And we've made a pact that if he ever suspects I'm drinking, that he is to hog tie me and drive me to a treatment center and drop me off before I can hurt anybody.
Thank you. So I guess my follow-up question is, and based on sort of what you wrote in answer 11 in your request packet,
Yeah.
you described that back in 2012, and this is justifiably so, that the distress that was caused by being denied by SSI really caused you to kind of spiral into this sort of, I would, for lack of a better term, call it self-loathing sort of justification for why you should drink. And I'm wondering what you've learned sort of about how you could respond to a situation that was that stressful differently moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think I didn't, like I said in the beginning, I didn't understand the nature of alcoholism. So at that point in time, because I had never tried to quit drinking and not been able to stop, I thought, well, I'll just try it out, and if it doesn't work, I'll go back. And what I now know about alcoholism is that it doesn't work that way. So I would never, ever drink or use drugs to overcome any kind of difficulty, because it doesn't work out for me or any other alcoholic.
Okay. Could you speak a little bit to how you would feel about if we were to not grant early termination, but maybe came up with another solution, maybe reducing some of your current requirements? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
What are my thoughts? Can you be more specific?
So you're actually asking us to grant full termination of your probation.
That's right.
And so we have the option to either do that or make a counter recommendation and say we might be willing to do other things based on your progress. And so I'm just wanting to hear from you if we decided not to terminate it, but maybe to just reduce some of your current sort of activities. What would your thoughts be about that?
I think it's up to you guys. You have a very tough job. I don't envy you. I feel like I have proven that I am rehabilitated and don't need to be on probation, but I have adjusted to this lifestyle, and I would continue to do whatever you ask me to do to keep my license.
Okay. So I am aware that it is our job and part of our responsibility, but maybe you could dive a little deeper up. So how would you feel about that? So, like, what's your reaction to that?
Obviously, I'm here because I would prefer early termination. I think I explained that it's very stressful, both financially and on a day-to-day basis. And I would trust you guys to make the best decision that you could.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
I was just wondering, so if you were granted petition that you've requested,
Yeah,
would you continue going to AA meetings? I think I know your answer.
absolutely.
And about how often do you think you would do that?
Probably daily. Yeah, maybe miss one or two, but I'm very involved, and that involvement benefits me in many, many ways, most of which staying sober.
And how about therapy?
I would continue with that weekly.
On biweekly? Is that what you said?
Weekly.
Oh, weekly. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I forgot to ask the handout that you gave us.
Yes.
Is that for what you've done so far or
Yes.
projecting out the full time?
No, this is what I've done so far.
So for about 2 years.
Yes, a little over 2 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further board questions? Nope. Do you have further questions, Ms.
No,
Lowry?
nothing further.
All right, then, Ms. Lowry, you have the opportunity to give a closing statement to the board.
Yeah, I don't think I need to thank you all again for your service. And I truly do trust you to make the best decision. I feel that I don't need to be on probation. That's why I'm here, and would appreciate early termination. And if you choose otherwise, I will do whatever's required to keep my license.
Okay, thank you. With that, the matter is submitted. The record is closed. The court reporter is going to give you a form by which you can request a transcript if you're so inclined. And as I mentioned to the other petitioner, I think you were in the room, the board will meet in executive session very soon and decide both matters, and will send you the written decision on your petition in due course.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And with that, we're going to move to closed session. Thank you. And we will reconvene in open session when we're done. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I probably would too if I took it with me. I don't need to do the addresses, or do I? No. No, okay. So we'd like to go out of order on our agenda. We are going to move the presentation by Pearson VUE up to right now. So I'd like to welcome Tom Magallanes, okay, Executive Director for Business Development, and Joel Norris, Business Development Manager, and they're going to do the presentation. So please take it away.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to present to the board today. So what we'd like to cover is an introduction of Pearson VUE, the value we bring to the board as you consider us to administer your licensure examinations. Pearson VUE is part of Pearson Education, which is a large educational institution. Again, my name is Tom Agalanis. I'm Executive Director of Business Development for Pearson VUE. I've been with the organization technically since 1992. I say technically because I've survived about 4 or 5 different acquisitions from legacy organizations. I'm not sure how I did that, but somehow survived those acquisitions. So we're really proud to be in front of the board today. We think we bring an extremely deep value proposition to the board and your constituents, both from a test center network standpoint, both here in the state of California, as well as nationally and even globally with our network of Pearson professional centers, which some of you may be familiar with today. We do a lot of testing in the state of California for many boards through our national partnerships. One of them is some of you may be familiar with ASWB for the social work license. We also do the Board of Nursing examination for the NCLEX exam and many others, which you'll see in a future slide. We're going to cover our test center network not only here in the state, but also nationally, internationally, as well as extensive testing that we do with the military folks. So we offer testing on military bases globally. We test in the theaters, we test on ships, and that's intended to help our military personnel, their spouses and significant others as they consider transitioning back into civilian life as to where, what they want to do at the next phase of their lives. So those are some of the things that we're going to cover this morning. We're going to also cover our support network. How do we support the board? What are the various access points, both from an executive level standpoint with myself? I'll be your executive sponsor. My colleague Joel Norris, who's responsible for the western part of the country, will be a primary contact working in conjunction with an individual by the name of Christine Nelson, who will be your program manager. And Christine is a former regulator from the state of Colorado. So we'll go through a whole support network as to how we will support your program, as well as the various access points. And at any point during the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions. We want to keep it as interactive as possible. So just a quick agenda. We're going to go through an overview of Pearson VUE, a quick overview of what the solution, what does that look like, the benefits of partnering with us, and again, any wrap-up questions that you may have. I will say that if you need us to attend any future board meetings, if you want to visit any of our test centers throughout the state, please reach out to Joel or myself, and we can provide you with an authorization letter so you can visit any one of our Pearson professional centers. So just again, Pearson VUE, we're part of Pearson Corporate. Pearson VUE was NCS Pearson. Pearson Education acquired us many years ago. We offer a broad assessment of services, primarily focus, the Pearson VUE part of the business is really focused on state licensure, whether it's you developing your own content, doing all the psychometric work, or having us do as well as administering it. So it's really a broad range of services with regards to test development, administration, and things of that nature. We also offer a variety of back office services in the form of application screening, continuing education services in partnership with our clients. But primarily our relationship will focus on you developing your content, you providing the psychometric services, publishing it to us, and then us handling all the service aspects with your candidates coming into our test centers, administering examination, providing the results to the candidates, as well as back to you for all the back-end analysis work. So the markets in which we operate, we think it's important for us to convey to you the depth and breadth of our experience. As you can see on the screen there, we cover multiple markets. State occupational licensing is really the core of what Joe and I focus on, and that deals with all kinds of state-issued licenses, whether that be in the form of the allied health arena, insurance arena, you name it, and any profession that requires a state-issued license. That's been our primary focus. And then we cover a variety of markets. Federal, you can see academic, military is a big one, which we'll touch on a little bit. But really, it's covering a multitude of professions, and we'll explain a little bit more why the impact on covering such a diverse client base and what that has in our test center network. As you can see there, we administer lots of exams. Test centers globally, more than 20,000, but really focusing on that little circle or that big circle on the right-hand side. We're really a service company. We're driven by technology. Technology is very important to us. However, if we didn't have the service mindset, service aspect, one of the things that I remind our colleagues is that we're providing a service to our candidates out there, to our clients. We get our paychecks every 2 weeks. What we're trying to do here for your candidates and your constituents is provide them an opportunity, get to a test center, have an outstanding service experience, take their examination, hopefully pass it, get their license, and then they can provide them themselves and their family. So it's important for us that we give them that access to a test center, give them that depth and breadth of a great experience when they're taking their examination. For the presence in the state, you're going to see next the various boards where we're providing services for, whether it's directly or through our national partnerships. You can see the first organization up there, a lot of you are familiar with the ASWB. We've been providing services with the ASWB for many years. Our flagship account is really the NCSBN, the State Board of Nursing with the nurses exams. That was our first client from a Pearson VUE perspective. When we secured that account back in 1999, that enabled us to build out the Pearson Professional Centers. We use the NCSBN, we use the focus group to build out those centers. We consider those centers as well as industry as being the platinum grade as far as test centers are concerned. They're very professionally designed. They all have the same look and feel. So if you visit a test center here in Sacramento, go back to your home city and visit a Pearson Professional Centers, you're going to see a lot of consistencies. And that goes from the paint on the wall, carpeting on the floor, the chairs, the computers all have 20-inch screens. You're going to see a very professional layout for the high-end professional that have that experience to take their licensure examination. You can see the various boards that we have listed up there. That's just a few of them that we listed. The more important piece is we've delivered almost 440,000 exams last year in 2018. The reason why that's important is that allows for our test centers to maintain a consistent operating hours. If there is a downturn in the economy, it does not affect any of our clients because there's enough volume going through our test centers that allows for us to sustain our testing operators. So you're not going to see a reduction in hours. You're not going to see us close any centers because we have such a diverse client base. I'll stop there and see if anybody has any questions. Nope. So the solution overview. So as we've been working with the board and the staff, so when we first put this together, we looked at the spoke and we looked at the wheel, and really came up with 5 different parts of that wheel that the services encompass. Now, as we've been in a healthy dialogue, exchanging information back and forth, working through the contract scope of work, we landed on 5 major aspects. It seems a lot more as we're working through, but there are 5 major aspects. So the board will continue to develop their own exams, publish their exams to us. We will put those exams through a rigorous QC process, not from a content standpoint, but make sure it's grammatically correct, making sure the punctuations are correct. So that's one of the things that we will be in a healthy dialogue with your test publishing staff. You will be assigned a test publisher. You will work directly with that individual. So the next part of it, once the exams are approved, they're put through, they're published, then we get into the accepting an eligibility file from the board. The board will continue to do the application screening component. They'll send us an application screening file. We will send an authorization test letter to the candidate. Once the candidate receives that authorization to test letter, they'll be immediately able to schedule their examination at any of the Pearson Professional Centers here in the state, as well as throughout the United States, internationally, as well as the military sites. And we'll get into that a little bit later. They'll be able to schedule that exam on the web. They'll be able to schedule it through our call center. They'll be able to schedule it on their mobile devices. So it is mobile friendly. And in today's day and age with the millennials, they want everything in real time and immediate access. So as soon as they get their authorization to test letter, they'll be able to pick up their smartphones and schedule their exam to take the test. They go in, they take the test. Same day, the results are sent back to the board. Candidate can then, the next day, schedule their examination. Should they fail the examination, they'll still have to go back to the board, receive their eligibility. Once we get that eligibility for the candidate to test, whether it's their initial test or the retake, once they get that authorization from us, they will be able to schedule their test. Now, if you're a candidate retaking the examination, once you get your authorization to test letter, you have that 90-day wait period. You don't have to wait for that 90 days to schedule your exam. You will be able to schedule it right away. You can't take it until after that 90-day wait period. but you will be able to schedule. So, for example, if you take your test today, you do not pass the examination today, you submit your application to retake the test back to the board. The board sends us that eligibility record. Let's say Monday, we send you the authorization, the test letter. You can schedule your exam as early as Tuesday. You can't take until after the 90-day period, but you can at least schedule it. That gives you an opportunity to make sure you have your exam scheduled, you can do your prep work, and then move forward from there. Test and Administration Network, again, we have 27 Pearson professional centers here in the state. You'll see a map very shortly. We also have partner sites through various college and educational institutions that if we need to open up additional centers for geographic purposes, we can certainly do that as well. Next, Joel. Just touch base a little bit on our call center. Our call center is located in Duluth, Minnesota. It's about 2 hours from our corporate office. Our corporate office is located in Bloomington, Minnesota. I am actually located in our Philadelphia office. Joel's located in our Chicago office. Neither of those three destinations are ideal if you want to visit us in the winter months. I can assure you that your weather out here has been phenomenal for Joel and I. We're questioning why we're going back this afternoon, but in any event, our call center is open 7 days a week. It's about 2 hours, as said, from our Bloomington, Minnesota office. It's a robust test center, advanced call center technology that will be able to report back to Steve and Kim and the staff on a monthly basis. I can tell you this, though, in today's day and age with technology, the number of calls going into our call center is dramatically dropping because of today's population using technology. We're seeing our online chat services. We're seeing extensive use of that component. Nobody wants to pick up the phone anymore today, at least the younger generation, such as my 3 kids. You got a question there?
Yes, hi. So since you're in Minnesota, it's great that you're there 7 days a week, but I was just thinking for online chat and answering the phone, Pacific time, how late are you open?
We are open 12, excuse me, not 12. We're open 12 hours a day, 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening.
So that's 8 in the evening our time or Minnesota?
That is actually 7 in the evening. It's Minnesota time, so it would be it's 8 to 8 East Coast time. I'm on East Coast. That's what I'm saying.
You're East Coast.
So
Okay.
it'll be 5 o'clock your time is when the call center will be.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, please.
So based on just the advancement in technologies and as more younger people actually move into our field and begin to do work, I guess I'm just wondering, is there an app do you have like an app that people can put on their phones and utilize this, or is it more so they can just access it? Oh, there you go.
Okay. We don't have an app, but it is
Mobile friendly.
it is configured it is mobile friendly. Yep. So I would hope at some point we'll go down that path with an app, but as of right now, this is what we have, and it's extensively utilized. So when they go into it, it'll come right up as the board's. Did I answer your question, Lee? Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
No, I just wanted to comment that this rescheduling feature is not something that's available now. Now the candidates have to wait until the 90 days pass before they can schedule.
So the Pearson Professional Centers. So just a couple of, and again, I encourage you, certainly at your leisure, if you want to visit one of the sites, please reach out to Steve and Kim, and we'll provide the necessary authorization letter for you to attend. So the Pearson Professional Centers, as I mentioned, they're 100% owned and operated by Pearson VUE. You can see the small picture down in the right-hand portion of the screen. So there is a security camera over every 2 testing stations that's video recording it. It's also audio recording it, and we retain those audio and video recordings for about 30 days, sometimes a little longer, but we retain it for 30 days. By that point in time, you'll know whether there's an incident and you need us to pull that audio or that video for you to go on and investigate an incident. The proctor that is seated on the right-hand side, that individual is actually seated in a soundproof room that's actually located in the test center. The peripheral vision, they'll be able to see on their right or left, so it gives them clear access to the test center. It is soundproof, as I mentioned. It is a patent design, so Pearson VUE owns that patent on the test center. The partitions are 18 inches longer, which allows for more quiet space for the candidate to test. So that when they go into a test center, our proctors will ask the candidate if they want earplugs. There's also noise reducing headphones at each testing station as well. Because some of our exams do have essays, do have open-ended responses. All of our keyboards are quiet keyboards, but I can personally vouch I've yet to hear or see a 100% quiet keyboard. So that's why we offer those additional devices. ROR our proctors, we have 2 at each Pearson Professional Center. One that handles the check-in process. The other is a test center proctor that is right, that you can see in the picture there. That's whether there's 1 candidate testing at a sitting or 15 candidates at a sitting. There's always 2 individuals at a test center. All of our proctors have to be certified. They have to be certified annually. And of course, being a testing company, after your training, you have to take a test. If you don't pass the test, then you're no longer going to be employed as a proctor. As far as security is concerned, we have 3 what we call biometrics capture. One is your picture. Second is a digital signature. The third is what we call palm vein scan. So you're going to ask to do a palm vein scan of your right hand, palm vein scan of your left hand. And then once you go through that check-in process, you have to go through the same process before you're actually getting access into a testing room. So there's multiple layers of security at the test center. And then we do various secret shoppers as well. So we actually hire a third party that goes in and does a secret shopper, making sure that we're executing all of our client business rules, making sure we do all the checking process. Basically, they're going in there to try to break things. They try to expose things. So it's a well-rounded. Yes, Christina?
So do you have, so do the examinee, the people who take the examination, do they know that they're being audio and video taped?
They do.
They do.
They do.
So also, how is the disability accommodation?
That is a great question. So we have all of our test centers. I'll tell a quick story. So we're in our 3rd generation of Pearson Professional Centers. When we first built the centers out in early 2000, we didn't have any ADA rooms, any accommodation rooms in our test centers. If you think back to that date and time, really the ADA requests were few and far between. Fast forward a couple years later, it started to pick up. So all of our 2nd generation of Pearson Professional Centers were all built out with 1 ADA room. We're on our 3rd generation of Pearson Professional Centers. All of them are going to have 2 or more ADA rooms in them, depending on the size. I can see in the next few years, they're going to be 3, 4, maybe 5 ADA rooms, because the request for ADA accommodations is really starting to soar through the roof.
So what about, oh, sorry.
Or some accommodations, candidate needs to get up, stretch, needs to lie on the front. I mean, we get all kinds of different requests for accommodations. By the way, the ADA rooms, there is a video camera in there. There's also a recording device.
Also, do you have simple, say, like mouse, the left click or the right click mouse? I think that's one thing that, come across too. Do you have that kind of, at least for that basic level of the accommodation?
We do. So again, if the accommodation comes in for a left click mouse, we have to provide that accommodation. Yes, Lynn?
But do they have to do that ahead of time, that they needed a left mouse?
They do need to do that ahead of time, because all of our centers, they don't have that readily available, so we would probably need to secure that or make sure that that's available at the center.
So is that something they need to initiate on their own, or do you ask them that question?
Actually,
Because they may not know.
That would either go through the board or they can come directly to us on that.
So we'll ask them that question.
I imagine that we can figure that out so that we know that information ahead of time.
Okay.
Yep.
And
We'll provision for things
Mute their microphone.
We'll provision for things like a trackball in the event that someone needs it and they want to bring their own in.
Okay.
It would need to be inspected by the proctor in advance, but we'll permit that if that's an acceptable accommodation by the board.
Okay. And then I have students who are quadriplegic. But they often do like voice stuff. Do they have a proctor who clicks the button for them? Is that how that works? Or do you have like a dragon speak type of?
It's usually reader recorder in those cases. So we'll usually, at our expense, provide the individual to come in and actually assist the individual with marking their answers on the exam.
Thank you.
That's a very good question. For candidates that are wheelchair bound, that don't need to get in the A room, we have, at every test center, we have 1 or 2 desks that can fluctuate up and down. So if somebody's wheelchair bound, the cubicle is actually a little wider, and we can lower the table so it's convenient for them to record their answers on the exam.
Is that a similar experience? I know that you work with the military, and I'm a veteran, so just a concern for veterans that are transitioning out of the military, coming back from combat zones where they may have lost limbs. Is that a similar process where you accommodate as needed if someone has prosthetic devices and things
That's
like
correct.
that?
Each of our military bases. So again, we have them globally, and we can actually set up some time with you if you wanted to drill down a little bit more. But yeah, at each if there's a vet that has special accommodations, we actually will provide those accommodations.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. So there is the map of our test centers in the state. There are the 27 Pearson professional centers located throughout California. As I mentioned, if we do a demographic analysis with Kim and Steve, and they're looking to provide a gap in coverage, we may be able to work with some of our educational institutions, colleges and universities. I've been to several. They're very professional centers. They're used to testing. They're testing their students on campus. So we use those sites to provide coverage usually in rural areas or geographic areas where it may not be convenient for students to get to a test center. So as our relationship continues to evolve, we'll identify if there's a need to activate any of those test centers. So again, there's our coverage. You can see we have extensive coverage in the Bay Area, extensive coverage in the LA area as well as San Diego. And again, we'll continue to work to make sure that we're providing test center coverage. Yes, Leah.
Yeah. So Kim, are you going to give them statistics about sort of locations of? My concern is, so I'm in Fullerton.
Okay.
And we graduate 60 people a year. And then our social work program graduates 100 people a year. And then there are 6 other institutions within 10 miles that are graduating students in MFT and counseling. So one center with, 10 cubicles, I don't know.
Prior to starting all this, we gave them our testing volumes. So
Okay.
they are well aware of it.
Excellent, thank
Yes.
you.
And I see there's Ontario, which might be worthwhile to set up a visit for that, since we're going to be in Southern California next year, or in the spring.
Sure.
Maybe. Steve and I have been to one of the sites a couple times. It's an impressive setup, very impressive.
Any other questions? No, we also have group scheduling that we can accommodate as well. So if there's a large graduating class and you may be concerned about capacity, if you want to get in contact with Joel or myself or our program manager in advance, we can certainly work with you on making sure there's more than adequate capacity for your students.
Yeah, of course, every January and June.
Just like
is-
every other
right,
educational program.
That'll be the law and ethics exam.
Okay.
So,
So, and you'll be able to reach out to us directly as well, assuming Kim and Steve don't have any issue with it. We're very transparent. We're very upfront. Before we go live with your program, we're planning on doing several industry days, whether it's in person or via the web or both. So we're planning on being very upfront, not only prior to the launch, but afterwards as well. So we're going to be very accessible to the board members, any of the educational institutions, associations. So please feel free to utilize us. There you can see our Pearson Professional Test Center network around the country. So these centers, so all of your and anybody who lives outside of the state of California will be able to access any of our current professional, Pearson professional centers. I know you do some out-of-state testing now, but to what degree, I'm not sure, Kim, what kind of access you have today. But any of our Pearson professional centers here in North America, as well as globally, because we have another 300 or so centers outside North America as well, including Canada.
So I live on the eastern side of the Sierras, so we're pretty far away from the earlier piece. So
Want to go back to that, Jill?
yes.
All right.
So could I take the test for California in Reno?
You can.
Very good. Thank you.
Any Pearson Professional Center in any state. If you're in Virginia, Pennsylvania, you can take. So if you have one of your students that's going to be out on vacation somewhere, I'm not sure why you'd want to take your test when you're on vacation, but you can certainly schedule your exam at any of the centers that you see fit. So when you go into, so once you receive your authorization to test letter, there'll be a drop-down box for you to access any of the test centers.
Sure. Could you explain the cities in pink or red? Some states have several cities that are pink. What is that?
Thank you, Rhett. So those were some of the newer centers that we added or upgraded the centers, added seats, et cetera. So that's why I was on our own internal. Sure if that's me or. Okay. That's the reason why they're different. They're color coded that way. It was our own internal, so we should probably go in and just change it to a single color. But that's the reason why.
They were recently added within just the last 18 months, and we had marked them because they are new. For some of our existing clients, we use this map and basically show them where capacity has been added nationally.
Okay. And you can see the various types of military sites where we've tested. We used to have a picture. I should probably bring it back out of mothballs, so to speak, and put it up there. But you can see we tested over in Okinawa, the USS Abraham Lincoln. We tested over in Iraq, Afghanistan. Interesting to note that the proctors at any of the military institutions are also subject to our proctor training. So they have to go through the training, they have to go through the testing, they have to be certified on an annual basis as well. I was at one military test center in Eglin Air Force Base. They are very professional centers. I've seen pictures of the test center on the USS Abraham Lincoln, and from what I understand, most of our ships at sea have some sort of technology or test center because there's a lot of sailors taking educational training, long distance training, and that also functions as a test center on the ship as well. So again, it's really the outreach that we're providing to our military personnel. We think that is a great service to the personnel. They are sacrificing for our country. Florida was probably the first state that really was very aggressive. They were recognized by both the upper and lower houses, the congressional and state senate during one of their legislative sessions. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago for being the first out there. So we're very proud of being able to offer their service, and I know California's going down that path as well. Okay. Not a problem. Okay. So what does a Pearson VUE team look like servicing your program? So we look at it as an extension of the board. All right, we don't operate in a vacuum. We don't operate in a silo. We don't operate as ourselves. We consider ourselves an extension of your staff. Steve will have instant access, which he's already experienced with myself and Joel, and more importantly, Christine Nelson, who is our program manager, who's spearheading the launch of the program. So there are the various aspects. So Christine is really, I'll use our quarterback terminology, so to speak. So the world revolves around Christine. We all report into Christine as she's launching the program. We report into her how she's supporting the program. You can see our global marketing department. So we plan on helping you market your program to the various military bases, putting various collateral out there. You'll be able, our security personnel is very intimately involved in your program as well. So if there's an incident or an issue at the test center, they'll be able to help with that. Their data security is another part of the security, not just test center incidents. There's also an extensive work that we do in protecting your candidates' data. So just going through the various aspects of it, The three blocks highlighted in orange, they're the various access points for you. As I mentioned, Christine's the program manager. She's responsible for the day-to-day operations. Our test publisher, your test publisher, will be assigned to work with our test publisher. We have our director of program management who's working with us. I myself will be your executive sponsor, so I'm accessible 24/7, as well as Joel. I consider anybody with a company issued mobile device or laptop, you're on 24/7. That's not to say you're getting calls constantly 24/7, but we need to be accessible to you. So that's sort of one of my hard rules, that if you're issued a company device. So as you can see, that all that activity there's a direct link and direct correlation with Christine and the board. So again, you have 4 access points. Christine being the primary one. I'm accessible. Joel's accessible. Paula, who Christine reports into, is accessible, as well as your test publisher. Your test publisher is yet to be named yet, but you have 4 various access points to support your programs at all times. We think that's important. We're all interchangeable. We're all knowledgeable what's going on in your program, regardless of the functional area. Any questions regarding the support level of your program? Steve, okay? All right.
And I will show with the board members, the contract has been submitted, has it not?
No, it has been submitted. So, and that's one of the things that we were, one of the for me, it was a driving force to submit this contract, was so we have an actual direct link with the test vendors. So this will be nice. So.
So Steve, when you said that, the contract has been submitted to where?
For DCA, the contracts department, for review. We had pre-legal review and such, so we're hoping that there's not going to be many questions and that'll go streamlined through. So.
Yeah, our attorneys have been in contact with each other, so they've actually worked through the terms and conditions component. That's usually the more difficult, not say difficult part, but more of the challenging part to get through. So they've already worked that out over the course of the past several months. So that's why we're in the position that was submitted to DCA.
Mm-hmm. So when do you expect the changeover happen?
So we are with the contract. We're hoping that a July 1st start date. So, but that work begins. I mean, we're kind of antsy. Hopefully that contract will be signed, sealed, and delivered soon, because there's a lot of work before that. So, but we've been in discussions and kind of laying out what we're going to be looking at in the next few months, which is good. You guys have been very good at communicating with us. So.
Yeah, both sides have been operating in good faith that it's going to go forward. So the project teams that have been engaged with Steve and Christine, for the most part, have been leading up those efforts.
And then it's going to expect to go live, if everything goes well, at when again? I think I missed
July
it.
1st.
July 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So how is the board planning to get the word out for this transition?
Everything, any way we can.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
we're going to go in high outreach mode.
Uh-huh.
Even if we have to go resort to the last minute, we'll mail something out to everybody. That's what we're going to do. But most of our outreach events occur in the spring, late spring. So that's going to be a really good opportunity for us to share the upcoming transition.
Are you going to be sending it to the universities that? I would
Anything-
recommend
anything-
it.
Anything we can do. And
Yeah.
we're really not, until that contract is actually done, the instant it's done, we're going to be looking at sending out the word and getting people ready. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not, the test in and of itself is not changing. It's
Right.
going to be who delivers it.
That's really important, though. They need to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Well, and what's
So-
nice is we will further discussions on that. We've talked already where they do, you've expressed even in this demonstration here that, yeah, you're working with actually getting the word out there and the
That's correct.
communication
Yeah,
and stuff. So we're going to be talking to them about, like you said, industry days possibly.
Industry days, we have MFT consortium meetings that we do quarterly. So we'll get the word out there, and we'll tell them when they apply, to take the exam, we're going to have to tell them who to contact. So it'll be out there in that fashion as well.
Even the people who are applying now for 3 months from now or
So there's
next
going to
month?
be,
for
so
3?
there's a whole bunch of different communications that goes on.
Yeah.
First of all, change over to administration, what we're going to do with people that are applying. There's, I'm sure on the forefront there is, and this maybe can be our starting of communication. We probably will have a period where you can't register. Hopefully it's going to be very short.
Okay.
So there's a lot of communication that's going to have to go out once that contract's signed to, what do you do when you're in the test site currently? What's going to happen if you have eligibility over there? And so, yeah, a lot of communication.
Yeah, much of it, it's going to mirror probably on a similar scale when we did the exam restructure transition.
Mhm.
That's what I envision.
Just a quick question in regards to when Leah was Christine, they were kind of like giving you a scenario about possible challenges when it comes to different able bodies. So I'm sure the board is able to capture that, but is that a streamlined, kind of like a guideline, a process in place where people know where to go to do that in order for them to be ready the day of so they don't go through a possible challenge? That's what I'm...
Yeah, and what happens is once we get, or I think in our contract, this one, Pearson VUE, the accommodation is going to be worked out with them directly. But how it happens now is we get the request, the doctor outlines in the request what it is that the candidate needs, and provided it doesn't give that individual an advantage in the exam that nobody else has, they get the accommodation. We send the accommodation list over to the test site, and then the test site contacts the candidate directly to schedule the exam. So the candidate who's requesting those accommodations should never arrive at the test center and those accommodations not be in place. That should never happen. And occasionally it has, either through miscommunication or I don't know, but no, it's all arranged in advance with the expectation when the candidate shows up, everything's ready for that candidate to test, whatever it is that they need, whether it be a private room, reader scribe, extra time, extra breaks, being able to bring food into the center to have consistent snacks. Diabetics typically need that.
I'm assuming that includes also because there is a security check where people
Right.
have to the left and right arm, and for situations where people don't have any arms.
That's
So
correct.
all of that will be taken care of.
Yes.
Correct. And that's happened before, so we're well experienced with that.
Okay, thank you.
But getting back to the communication to the constituents, we will be right with the board, right with the Board of Behavioral Sciences staff, and with that communication. We have a full-blown marketing department to help with that messaging through the use of social media, et cetera. So we're all in as far as getting the communication. It has to be seamless, has to be flawless. Okay. And one last slide. What are the benefits of partnering with us? One is our extensive experience with high-stakes examination. Many of you may have been testing with us already, or some of your family members through the various licensure exams that we already went through. We have an extensive, flexible business rules engine. One of them we talked about extensively was being able to schedule your exam while you're in that 90-day waiting period. Really is the biggest one. Candidates can know that they have their exam scheduled and prep for the retake. The test center options outside of the state of California, including the military sites, we think is a big value for the candidates. Instead of them having to travel a long distance to take their test, they can go to a test center that's most convenient to them. The seamless integration between us and the board is a big one. Again, just to reiterate, we're an extension of the board. We're your face to the candidates and your constituents. You can hardly hear me? That is unfortunate. People used to have to tell me to tone my voice down. So that's ironic that you're telling me that you can't hear me. But one of the big things I was saying is really the seamless integration. So we're the face of your program. It's important that our staff is professional. They're greeting and treating your candidates, making sure they have a breathtaking experience, to use a term that our president and CEO uses quite often. We need to provide that experience to the candidates. What we do is very important to them. The ongoing communication to the external stakeholders is important. We want to be part of that. We don't want to just have you be that face of the program dealing with the transition. We want to be upfront. We want to be engaging. We want to be able to help the programs, not only pre-launch, but after the launch as well. So Each year, we'll be conducting an annual business review with the board. If we need to get out there and do industry days on an annual basis with the various stakeholders, we're all in to do that as well. And then the professional staff. I'm proud to be part of that staff. As I mentioned, Christine's a former regulator from the state of Colorado. She knows what it's all about. She knows what it means to be on both sides of the fence. So I'm really proud that Christine was chosen to be your program manager. So those are the value points that we believe we're bringing to your program. Yes, Christina.
So do you guys do a customer satisfaction survey after they're done?
Very good question. At the end of the examination, before they get the results, mind you, they will have they will take a survey. We take those surveys very important. The biggest two components of that survey. One is how easy it was to get that to our test center. I'll tell you a quick story. I was in Florida visiting one of our test centers. It's a new test center. We were following the directions that were on our website. Well, directions turned out to be wrong, so we had to give that real-time feedback. But those are the things that we look at quite extensively. How easy it was to find our test center. What was the climate control in the test center? Those kind of things are very important because that affects candidate experience.
So what are normally the rating? The
Ratings,
overall rating?
ratings are generally in the mid to upper 90s. Okay, but we do monitor. If we see a trend, we will reach out and we will find out what's behind that trend.
Thank you.
Okay.
So when you say the eval is, so after they finish testing, two questions. After the applicant tests, do they get their results immediately?
They do, but after they take the survey.
So, and that was going to lead to my question. So after having, because I actually took the test, it's a pretty extensive process and fatiguing. I'm wondering, so how long or how large is this survey? Because
it's an 8 to 10 question.
Okay. And what's been your experience with candidates? Are they, I mean, is there any pushback? Are they like, why am I doing
It's a voluntary survey, so you don't have to take it, but we get high levels of participation in the survey.
Okay.
Very high levels of participation.
And
Like
we
the
can also
75-80% range.
we can also add questions. So if you want specific questions that are directly related to what the board wants to ask, we can add those as well.
Somewhere between 75-85%. It's a very short survey, so it's presented as 10 very simple Likert scale questions, and candidates go through it within 5 minutes. Yeah.
That's well, there's a reason why we do it before we give you your results.
And I'm going to point out, too, that Pearson VUE administers the MBCC exam that we use for licensure on a national level, as well as the ASWB. So this will just bring us, all our exams would be administered by the same vendor. I like the consistency.
Any other questions for us? Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate you making us part of your agenda. I do have some business cards that I'll give out to the board members. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me. I'm available, again, 24/7. Doesn't matter what time of day. I know there's a 3-hour time difference, but it is with me constantly. Great. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give a shout out to Steve as well as Mark Mason. They have been working extensively on this project for, I think we started these conversations about a year ago. So it's nice to see this come to fruition.
Thank you, Kim. So at this point, we would like to go back onto our regular sequence and welcome Karen Nelson from DCA, who is here to give us an update on the status of the executive officer salary study and just bring us up to date in other departmental activities.
If you feel like sitting up here, Karen, you can stand, if that's okay. Hopefully I'll be able to. How's this? Are you guys able to hear me? Good afternoon, everyone. Karen Nelson, Assistant Deputy Director at DCA's Board and Bureau Services. First, I wanted to say thank you for being flexible and moving some things around. Truly appreciate that. So wanted to start off with the Executive Officer Salary Study, as you had just... Oh, it just went soft? Okay. Why did I do this? how's that? Okay, how's that? Perfect. And if you, for some reason, aren't able to hear me, just wave and I'll move. Okay. As we had reported in the past board meeting, the department has retained KH Consulting to conduct the executive officer salary study. And as we had also said before, the project is expected to be completed by the end of March. So we're in the month of it. At this time, KH Consulting is drafting the report, and as Mr. Castillo had indicated at the November meeting, the final report will be reviewed by the department and administration, and that a final copy will also be shared with all of our programs. So that is to say, it's currently in progress, so as soon as we have that available, we will share that with all of our programs. And I was going to go ahead and continue on with the department activities, if that's okay. All right, so first I wanted to recap some of the great work in 2018. This past year, we convened 9 licensing and enforcement work group meetings, 3 substance abuse coordination committee meetings, 4 directors' quarterly meetings and pro rata work group meetings, and 2 directors' board member and advisory committee leadership teleconferences. These activities not only brought our programs together to promote open dialogue, but also promoted collaboration to further our mission in protecting California's consumers. I wanted to thank the board and board staff for participating in many of these convenings. With regard to the annual report is now available online. It can be viewed on the DCA website for a much more comprehensive view of the department's achievements. If you have not had a chance to view it, we encourage you to do so. It does contain statistical and financial record of the work that the department and its board and bureaus have achieved over this past year. With regard to the administration transition, as you all know, Monday, January 7th, marked a new era for our state as Governor Newsom was sworn in as the 40th governor of the state of California. We at DCA are honored and excited to be a part of this new team, and our department is looking forward to doing all that we can to further the governor's mission. The department has met with the transition team and some familiar faces that have been appointed to positions at the governor's office. As for our current appointees, there's nothing you need to do other than continuing the service and great work that you've been doing on this board. We're currently working with the governor's appointments team regarding appointment vacancies and pending reappointments. This past Monday, February 25th, the director hosted the first 2019 Directors Quarterly meeting. And at this meeting, DCA provided an update on the DCA Regulations Unit, the Executive Officer Salary Study, and other division updates. And as you may recall, these meetings are to ensure that the director is available to hear important issues facing our boards and bureaus. And the last thing I wanted to mention, 2019 is a mandatory sexual harassment prevention training year for the Department of Consumer Affairs. And this means all employees, board members are required to complete this training this year, even if completed last year. This training is online, interactive, and can be completed at your convenience. And if you have any questions about this or any other trainings required during your tenure as a board member, please contact our office and we're happy to assist you with that. And that concludes the department update as well as the Executive Officer Salary Study update. And I'll take questions at this time.
So after the, I'm curious about the executive officer evaluation study, not evaluation, the salary study.
Definitely.
So, so after the report being received, if it's deemed that it's necessary to have changes, where, will it start first? Will it start at the DCA level, or the board need to respond to it?
So as I mentioned earlier, the report will be shared with department, the executive office, as well as agency and the administration. Of course, all of those parties will take a look at the recommendations and other findings that may be included in the report. As far as next steps, it would probably be determined after that report is shared to those specific entities, and then a discussion, of course, with our boards, our programs, as well as those folks to determine what next steps may look like. We are looking at this study as a roadmap to see what we can improve. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, I don't know if you want to mention the leadership changes at agency.
Oh, sure. So at the director's quarterly meeting, we did introduce the Deputy Secretary of Business and Consumer Relations, Layla Mirashidi. So she actually went ahead and said a few words about her background, and she will be having one-on-one meetings with our executive officers and our chiefs so that she can better understand and have that, that relationship with them as well. So I hope that you have that soon if you haven't already done so. Oh, great. Perfect. Fantastic. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Great to see you all again.
Thank you, Karen.
Should we just move right on? Moving right on? So moving on to our consent calendar. I believe we all received those minutes as a separate attachment, right, Christina?
Yes, I do have a comment about the minutes that were received under a separate package. You have the first version, and online there is a second version. There's a slight difference. The second version is what I'm asking for approval on. I'll explain the difference. Page 2, line 4. Page 5, line 32. Whether under attendees, see voluntary sign-in sheet attached. The version I'm asking for approval on will now say available upon request, and we've omitted this copy of the sign-in sheet.
Okay. So do we have a motion? Oops.
I just had a couple of just technical. On page 9 of the meeting minutes for November 30th, line 31, it's listed as CAGE, C-A-G-E Consulting. It should be KH. And then again, line 10, or page 10, line 1 and 3.
So with those suggested edits, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the meetings of November and January?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
So Christina, I think is there any further discussion? Okay, then let's just move to a vote.
Jonathan Maddox,
Yes.
Becca Stout, Dr. Peter Chu,
Aye.
Christine Whitlisbach, Max Disposti,
Yes.
Betty Conley,
Yes.
Deborah Brown, Christina Long,
Yes.
Alexander King.
Yes.
Carries.
Yeah, and we didn't have people introduce themselves.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, but we didn't have all of them. So we, because we're coming back, we had an open session yesterday, but today we're back in open session with a full complement of attendees. So we usually we've been introducing board members, but now we have actually our BCA staff as well. So let's go through and do introductions one more time as we move into some more items.
Madam Chair, before we get too far along, I just have a question that I forgot to ask earlier. With regard to the sexual harassment training, will Christina be sending us a link? Can you send us a link?
We can get you a link.
Thank you.
And we will remind you, as we always do.
Yes, thank you. I just
Yes.
wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. Okay, thank you.
I think we have until October. At the end of this year? This year, just by December 31st? Yeah, let's not wait that long.
Thanks, Christina. So Roseanne, you want to start over in your end of the neck of the woods?
Roseanne Helms, excuse me, Roseanne Helms, I'm the legislative analyst for the board.
Jonathan Maddox, MFT member.
Becca Stout, LMFT member.
Peter Chu, public member.
Christine Whitlisbach, public member.
Max Disposti, public member.
Sabina Knight, legal counsel.
Betty Connolly, LEP member.
Deborah Brown, public
Executive officer.
Deborah Brown, public member.
Leah Brew, LPCC member.
Christina Wong, LCSW member.
Alexander Kim, public member.
Steve Sodergren, Assistant Executive Officer.
Thank you. And then I also wanted to mention that we are deleting item 21 and 22 from the agenda today. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Christina. Would the public like to come up and introduce themselves? Don't have to, but we're welcome.
Yeah, this is just introductions.
Janley Wong, National Association of Social Workers.
Hello, Megan Bailey, ACSW.
Katie Schoonover, MSW intern from Chico State.
Pam Cole, licensed New York therapist, licensed mental health counselor, just moved to Marin County.
Thank you.
Betty?
So,
Sorry, I have a question, because you kind of went by. We're not discussing 21 and 22?
Correct.
So can you say something about why?
Roseanne?
So 21 was a minor technical change, but it had some substance that we were considering for that bill that we decided was too substantive for that bill to make the change this year. And then the same thing with the next item. We were considering some changes based on some feedback we had gotten from the legislature, but we haven't, it's a little bit premature to discuss that yet.
Okay, thank you. For the license portability bill proposal then, that's going back to the P&A committee, is that how that's?
No, the bill will run as approved, as the language was approved. We're not considering any further substantive changes.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
So Roseanne, will we see this item back in next board meeting or?
Not on the portability.
Not on the portability, okay.
Absolutely.
So in regard to the portability bill, it's done now. We won't be bringing that back up to talk about. And the reason I'm saying that is we have an individual who sat here the entire day for that particular item. And so I think that instead of sitting here waiting for that, she needs to know that.
I did tell her that when I met with her this morning.
Oh, that we wouldn't be talking about it? Oh.
Right, and if she had any comments, then if she wanted to make any statements about it, she could make it at the public
Oh, is
comment
it-
period.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I also assured her that bill got introduced.
And the board will see the bill again.
Yes.
And have an opportunity to support it and discuss it.
Yeah.
Or oppose it, sorry.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't oppose it, but yeah. Yeah. No, it was just some language that was suggested or they wanted to include in it, and then that decision was reversed. That's why we had it on the agenda, so. Yeah, so.
All right. So board chair report. Kim and I met with Ryan Markroff, the Director of Legal Affairs, and we went through an overview of the unit and the role that the Legal Affairs Office plays in our board activities. In addition, we did briefly discuss the new review process, had a chance to continue to express concerns, I think, about the delays and the importance of timely action, and had a definitely conversation about that, and seemed to, it was
productive.
Productive, interactive meeting. I don't know if any board members would like to discuss any of the activities that you've been involved with, particularly as it relates to the board. Anybody doing anything really? Nope. Leah.
Nothing more than my usual answering of questions from people all over the country about how to get in California.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I do have had an inquiry from one of the local cable television networks, Spectrum or Charter Communications. They wanted to do a story about mental health. And, after I gave my business card out, they said, hey, is there any chance to discuss? So I'll probably refer that to you, Kim,
Okay,
just for
that'd be great.
further direction, because they formed a new news media type of station where they're reporting very local news coverage, like micro news, at the neighborhood level in the Southern California region. So I will definitely give you the contact.
Definitely, that'd be great.
Thanks. Yeah. Vika?
Well, actually, could I go back to your discussion with legal about the delays? Were they able to discuss the purpose, why the delays and what they were attempting to do to modify that?
Well,
can we discuss that here, or should I?
The delays is kind of twofold. The first being that if you look at the very back of your packet, there is a step-by-step process for the regulation review. There's 13 steps. Under the previous scenario, we only had to do those steps 1 through 13 once. A concern was raised at the number of regulation packages that had been rejected that were related to DCA regulation packages. The number, I've gotten a number that out of 50, maybe there were 6 rejected, or it's gone up as high as 8. So 6, 7, 8 packages were rejected. And so that was a concern. And so they instituted a pre-review process, which means we do steps 1 through 13 twice. We have to do them 1 through 13 before we can notice the regulation. And then after the regulation has been noticed and it goes through its 45-day comment period, we get to do them again. So their solution, which I'll talk about in my budget report, is essentially they're going to create a regulation unit solely dedicated to just reviewing regulation packages.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. So why don't we move right into the executive officer's report then? Thank you, Kim.
Okay, so the budget, you'll notice that there was an adjustment. I think at the November board meeting, we had a budget of about $11 million and change. It's now increased to $12 million plus. The increase is due to some different adjustments that we've had in our budget. The way our budget works is if we're budgeted, say, $10, but I need to spend 12, you have to increase your cap. So that's what the adjustment reflects. Again, we're still working with the fiscal system. It's getting better, but it's not perfect yet. So in terms of challenges we have, it's monthly reports that we're used to getting. But what you have before you is the best that we can get out of the DCA budget office. And I want to tip my hat to the budget office because it was a string of reports that they had to pull, tabulate, and put together just to get what I can present to you today. So a lot of extra effort on their part. So hats off to them. But based on what they were able to put together through the end of January, we have spent about 54% of our budget. Obviously, the bulk of it tends to be in personnel. So we seem to be right along lines where we have been in previous years at about this same time period. With respect to fiscal, in November or September, at the September board meeting, I think we talked about these challenges. I pointed out that DCA thought that they would be able to get through resolving the year-end accounting and be able to present that to us for the fiscal year 17-18 at the end of this month. DCA Budget Office reports that is still on, they're still on track to do that. So we'll expect that. And then moving forward, it should be a little bit easier to get the reports, primarily because now we've been on the system for a full year. Some of the bugs have worked out. And I think if you think about fiscal in terms of the same bumps we had along the road when we first came on to Breeze, it's identical. So, I mean, we're adjusting, and all the individuals that need to know about the challenges know about them, and they're working diligently to resolve them. So we're moving forward. Our general fund loans, you'll notice that in this fiscal year, we are scheduled to receive our last payment of $3.3 million, and that will be the final payment of the total $12.3 million that the board loaned to the general fund. So that will be resolved. Karen spoke a little bit about the new governor, and on January 10th, Governor Newsom proposed his new California budget for 1920, and there are two proposals in that budget that directly impact the board. The first one is our request to permanently establish two positions that are working in a limited term capacity. One is in the cashiering unit, one is in the examination unit. If we were not successful in this request, those positions would go away at the end of this fiscal year, and the workload that they are doing would have to be absorbed by the remaining staff. Happy to report that we were successful in this endeavor, and so those positions will carry on in perpetuity, so that was exciting. The second proposal is one I briefly touched upon a few minutes ago, and DCA as a whole made a request for an additional 24.5 positions to add to the department, and the way it's broken out is 7 positions for the business service office and fiscal operations. So budgets and the business service office are going to get a few more bodies to help do the work that they need to do. 8 positions for DCA legal. 6 of those are attorney positions. 4.5 positions for the Division of Investigation, and 2 positions for the Office of Professional Examination Services, and funding to permanently establish 3 positions that are in human resources that are there on a temporary basis. DCA, with respect to the legal positions, the 6 attorneys that they intend to hire, the plan at this point is to establish a regulations unit solely dedicated to review regulation packages. These positions, if approved in the governor's budget, would become effective July 1 of this year. And then DCA will go through the hiring process and recruitment process and training process to bring these positions on board. At a recent meeting I attended, the plan to onboard these folks would be to partner one of the regulation attorneys with our current legal counsel so that they could learn about the board business and understand what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and then get them, for lack of a better phrase, up to speed so that they can begin to work on our regulation packages solely. And then that would leave our legal counsel free to do our other matters. So for a while, as this comes on, it would not be unusual to expect to see 2 attorneys at our meetings to be present when we discuss our regulation proposals. During the first year, it's a 3-year program. During the first year, DCA projects it will spend $5.2 million. In the second year, $4.5 million, and then in the final year and ongoing, $3.6 million to fund all of these positions. And the positions will be funded through our pro rata. Our share of cost of pro rata for these positions will be $113,000. And if we compare what our current pro rata is with the increased pro rata now that we would have, currently 21% of our budget is spent on pro rata, and that works out to be about $2.6 million. For the 1920 pro rata costs, we are estimating those at just under $2.5 million. And the reduction, which is kind of puzzling, it's actually due in part because the Breeze contract is finally ending. So what's happening is the vendor that developed and implemented Breeze is transitioning out of DCA. DCA's IT services now will be taking care of the ongoing maintenance. So we had a reduction in our pro rata of $181,000. So that offsets the $113,000 that we would incur as a result of the new positions. And so we sort of have a net loss, but at the end of the day, it still leaves our budget at 21% for pro rata. So, yes.
A couple of questions. One is with our own IT being able to take that over. I know the new supervision piece and other things that we're trying to make more automated, they're able to take on that workload?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Some of the changes that we have actually asked for have been done by our own IT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so.
And then my second question related to hiring attorneys. This is unrelated to trying to have our own attorney and our own communications person, right?
That's correct. And we'll still make efforts to obtain those positions.
Okay, so is that separate from this process completely? Okay.
Yeah. Well, if we were to establish any of those two positions, the board would have to prepare a request, and we would be solely responsible for the funding.
Right.
Solely responsible.
So when we did, I know this is a bit ahead, but when we're doing this assessment, or when we did the assessment for the adjustment in making fees if necessary, was that included? It is.
We are looking ahead, yes. There
Okay.
are a couple of factors that we have on the horizon on our wish list.
Okay.
And so we're trying to factor all of that in as best we can.
So the new fee structure would represent that. And then once we get the new fee structure approved, then we could go about trying to hire, to
Right.
get that permanent.
Yeah, because one of the question that has been repeatedly coming up in the last two position requests for the last 2 fiscal years is technically we're structurally imbalanced. And so how are we addressing that?
Right.
So the fee audit will answer that, especially when we determine what the new fees are going to be, to make sure that they're sufficient to fund operations ongoing and into the future and account for additional expenses.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
There are at least one other board who hires their own attorney.
There are some attorneys, like the medical board has their own attorneys. Dental board does not, but they had the authority.
Okay, so my question is there any commitment on DCA's part if we were to get the authority to hire our own attorney, that they would back that off the pro rata?
That discussion has not happened.
Okay, thank you.
So there aren't any other questions about the budget?
I don't think so.
Okay, so moving on to operations, the second quarter, not surprisingly, we had a decrease in application volumes because it's not graduation season. So we dropped about 46%. Staff is breathing a little bit easier, and our processing times, they're varying. You'll notice that the MFT examination processing times went up. This is in part due to a vacancy and some training. The position has been filled. We've been working on training, and anytime you do that, you inherently drop off your processing time. So we expect those to improve. We issued a grand total of 1,200 initial licenses last quarter, and as of January 1st of this year, we have over 115,000 licensees and registrants, and we still continue to grow. It's really amazing. The examination program continues to be robust. We administered just a little over 4,500 examinations in the second quarter, and the pass rates in the second quarter and in the first quarter are there for your comparison. They're pretty consistent. We did 10 examination development workshops between October and December. And then I want to point out that during a routine examination analysis that we conduct whenever we're administering exams of the LMFT clinical exam, OPES identified some questions that were not performing as expected. So to mitigate all of that, a rescore of that exam was conducted, and as a result, 15 candidates received a passing score. So we notified all 15 candidates. Needless to say, they were happy campers, and they are all now licensed. And when we notified them, we made a commitment to expedite their initial licensure. So they're all very, very happy. We continue to work with OPS staff to develop information and brochures and materials to better inform the candidates about preparing the exam, how to prepare for the exam, as well as how the exam is developed. And that work continues. OPS is still working on the occupational analysis for the LMFT group. And as you know, we've talked about this in the past, but the occupational analysis is that study of the profession, and it provides the base for the LMFT written clinical exam. So as part of the process, we're going to survey our LMFT licensees in California, and the survey should be available by the end of this August. I'm going to encourage all LMFT individuals, licensees, to participate in this exam. The input is critical. It's extremely important to know what's happening out in the profession so that we can provide an exam that it adequately and sufficiently addresses the practice that's occurring out there, and to ensure that the students are prepared properly. So we're going to try email as well. So all licensees that have email with us, it'll be sent to the email address that we have on file. If it's changed, we would encourage those individuals to go online, change their email address, as well as encourage LMFTs to give us their email address so that they can participate. We're also planning on making the survey available on our website, as well as I will disseminate it to the professional associations so that they can send it out to their licensees. And we'll probably make it available to the consortium group so that they can disseminate it to their licensees as well. But the more information and the larger response that we receive, it's going to enable us to develop a better and more comprehensive exam.
I have a question. So that's great to hear. I'm wondering, is that something that is compatible with cell phones? If someone wants to actually access their emails on their phone, they could work through the
I would
survey
imagine, but I will ask. We'll ask OPS to make sure that if the survey is available. I imagine it's going to be like SurveyMonkey.
Okay.
And so if you can access SurveyMonkey on your phone, you should be able to. Okay. Should be able to, but we'll confirm that. That's a good point.
And then the second question I have is, I'm wondering how robust of a survey this is. I remember when I got my, they were soliciting feedback for the strategic plan of ways, maybe a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
That survey was so robust. I mean, I think I finished it, but a lot of people I spoke to were like, I tried it, started it, I'm not doing it. So about how many questions do you think this will be? Like how time consuming?
I don't know, and that is a concern. We were looking at to see if it was legally possible to provide some CEU units for completing that survey. Legally, we can't right now, so that's something that we would have to change in a regulation moving forward. But I think it would be worthwhile to do that because it is a service to the profession, and it's an incentive to complete.
So it sounds like it's still going to be pretty robust. But
I would say, I mean, if you look at the way the exam's developed, I think we have 5 or 6 content areas. And so to drill down and to get into the breadth of that content area, it's not going to be just 10 questions. Okay. It's going to be, it's going to be, I would say robust is a very good word, but.
Okay, so I appreciate the transparency. Would it be feasible to, if CEs aren't available, to people who complete the survey get some sort of credit toward their next licensing renewal, like that maybe they get $15, $20 off their, I mean, just something. I don't know if you can, but
I don't know if we can, but I'm happy to look into it.
Just some sort of incentive to encourage people to do it.
Or maybe a random drawing for a gift card or something for Starbucks for $10.
Just cannot, Yeah, because, the survey, my guess is it's going to be anonymous. So I don't know. But I'll look into it. If we can incentivize the population to respond, I'm not above doing that.
Can I ask back on the examination program on the pass-fail? Do we have any ethnic, English second language, gender feedback on who passes, who fails?
I don't. We collected data not too long ago, didn't we? Did I forget? I must have.
No, we don't collect anything on gender or ethnicity or anything.
The reason I'm asking is I've been approached about English language learners or English as a second language. Testees and examinees are having a difficult time with the test.
Well, there is an accommodation that they can request. if they meet certain benchmarks. You know, there's 3 criteria one of 3 that they need to satisfy, and if they can satisfy it, then they can get, it's time and a half for the exam.
And that is something we could actually, on who's been approved for the ESL accommodations and their pass rates, we could figure that out.
Mhm.
But we don't voluntarily ask for any sort of demographics.
Okay.
at
I would
the
appreciate
testing
knowing
sites
about
now.
the ESL, or,
Yeah.
yeah, because of the
Actually,
questions.
all diverse groups along with it, and hope I'm not cutting. Is that something Pearson could potentially do, or
Yeah.
since they're
Yeah,
moving,
yeah.
that they could break that out for us?
Well, I don't know if they can
Or
break it out, but,
would that be
no.
appropriate, or would it be appropriate? I'm just wondering.
I think
Yeah,
it's
when
the
the demographics,
appropriate.
we can't.
We cannot.
No.
And if I could just ask, so where would a person wanting to get this, meet these 3 criteria, when do they see that?
It should be available, it's on the website, I believe.
So it's on the website. So with the examination and with the letter, I believe they get sent out. I haven't looked at the letter in a while. It basically describes to them that if you want an accommodation, which includes ESL, then you have to apply to it with through the board.
Okay, great.
So,
Yeah.
and it has the 3 criteria.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty, moving on, the administration program, we received over 8,000 applications in the second quarter. Again, a 21% decrease, not surprising because it's not graduation season. And the chart below this, the renewal activity, that reflects all our renewal activity in the last quarter. You'll recall that we reported that effective October 1st, we went to an online renewal option only. And as a result, we have our online renewal activity up 94% in the last quarter. We haven't gotten too much in the way of negative feedback about this. Those candidates that have had some challenges or difficulty, they've contacted us and we've spoke with them and we've made arrangements with them on an individual basis. But by and large, everybody seems to be renewing online, which is wonderful because if you renew online, then it's a complete renewal. And once you finish the process, your license updates immediately. So it's a really efficient way to do it. It's also, 3% at DCA is processing paper and BBS is processing 3% of the
Christina?
renewals in paper.
I just want to tell the board that, I do have that experience about having the board, board staff, assisted me individually. And it's very, very quick, and so I'm very happy with the services. And the only thing is just about, the in-between waiting time, because it's really just silent. So I think it would be great, to maybe have something, whatever it is, to signal.
Oh, music?
Oh, yeah. Some classical music that you don't have to pay copyright and.
On the phone too.
Right? I mean, it is important. You don't want to,
Yeah.
promote any current contemporary, So, yeah, but I just have to say that it is very easy, and I just want to commend the board staff for just doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
And I can second that. Yeah, okay, 3 board members. Let it be noted.
It's almost as easy as shopping on Amazon. So moving along on our enforcement program, we received 405 consumer complaints, 299 notifications of arrests and or convictions. We closed 632 cases. We referred 37 cases to the Attorney General's Office for formal discipline. And as of December 31st, there were 167 cases pending at the AG office. We filed a total of 21 accusations and 19 statements of issues. And the final number of citations that we issued this quarter was 40. And I know the board members have been working hard, and it's reflected. We adopted 62 decisions in the last quarter. So thank you for your hard work. And the average number of days to complete formal discipline in the second quarter reached 506 days. And our year-to-date so far is 506 days. And the performance measure for this metric is 540 days. So this is one of the first times I think we have reported that we are actually under it. So that's exciting.
Does that mean we're under it compared to other agencies? Other boards,
The performance measure is applicable to all DCA boards and bureaus. So it's just, I don't know how we're faring with the others. other boards and bureaus. I know that all of us were well in excess of 540, and it's nice for us we've been sort of hovering above it, knocking on the door, and we're finally under. So I'm excited about that.
Do we have any data about if the time under the AJ office is actually being reduced as well? Because I know that we have no control over that. So
Yeah, we don't. We do. We started tracking a while ago how much time the case stays at the AG's office. And right now, in the last quarter, it was 318 days, and our year-to-date average was 332 days. If I recall correctly, we were reporting close to 400 days. So the AG has gone through an extensive hiring. They have more attorneys. And plus, we have now 2 dedicated individuals in our office that monitor all the cases that go to the AG office. And they are tasked with frequently reminding the AG about where is, our accusation, where's our statement of issue, where is the case in the process. And so I think those combined efforts, we're starting to see the results.
Thank you.
Kim, related to this is I've noticed now we're at more than 1,000 per quarter.
Yeah.
Increasing the number of registrants and licensees. And how are we keeping in touch with the AG's office to say, you may want to project out, at least for the next couple of years, as we continue to grow? I don't know what the other licensing boards are doing, if they're growing at the rate that we are. But when I started on the board, we were like 80,000. And now we're pushing 116.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means more people are going to be.
Exactly. Yeah, the population is growing in all the professions. I'm sure everybody's got to be feeling at least some level of increase in population. Unfortunately, requests for additional positions tend to be reactive rather than proactive. So we shall see. We shall see. So overall, the average number of days to complete all board investigations, that's everything, in the second quarter is 106 days. The year to date is 100 days. So I think we're humming along pretty well. Moving on to CE audits, that number of 405 is incorrect. Evidently, math is not my strong suit. So we conducted 595 audits rather than 405, adding 190 to 405, but duh. Anyway, so we had 68% of the licensees pass the audit. Unfortunately, we had 32% that did not. Yeah, I'm a little stunned because we've been doing this now for close to 2 years, and we are out there at all outreach events about CEUs, what you need to do, what's required. What's interesting to me is that we're missing a lot of the first-time courses in addition to the biennial law and ethics requirements. So so that seems to have spiked up a little bit. Yeah. So there might need to be a little more effort on, hey, you just got licensed, you need to do this for your first renewal. We've also modified how we do our outreach events. Our outreach events used to only include the licensing staff. We're now sending our licensing staff plus our CE analysts out to speak about CEUs and what's required and how you need to take them. So I'm hoping that outreach will be effective. But we'll just continue to do it.
So, Kim, I am very surprised, to see that, that 10 licensees did not complete any continuing education hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when I was just averaging, that 409, it's like 5%.
Yeah.
Racially speaking, it's pretty high.
Yeah.
And then there's still 17 people didn't even respond to the board's request. And so now for that group, they don't respond. Mm-hmm. Then what is the next step?
They get referred to the enforcement unit for an issuance of a citation and fine of up to $1,200.
And then their name will be published.
Oh, yeah. And if they don't respond to that, then it's tacked on to their upcoming renewal, and they can't renew their license until they pay the fine.
Wow. And so this is the group that they actually check, well, check, the licensees, check that they have completed, their,
Yeah, this is a sampling of recent renewals.
right. So can they renew for the next time?
No, not if they don't pay the fine.
Wow.
No, they're going to have to resolve the fine first.
Yeah. So I have a question. So I'm noticing that the 3268 demographic is pretty consistent for everyone except for LEPs, and that's almost 50-50.
That's up. Yeah.
So I'm just
It's a smaller population.
No, I understand that, but I'm wondering, one, is that normal just year by year? And if it is there any consideration to actually do more audits of the LEPs just to see if this is generally is this a bigger issue than we're aware of? Because
Well, I would say that there's a couple of things going on. For up until the mid-2000s, LEPs did not have to do CEUs. So it's within maybe the last 5, 6, 7 years that they've had to do it. So there is that. So that's the educational component. And the second component is people just don't do CEUs. So what Steve and I do is we just recently went to the conference, the CASP conference in, was that October?
October.
Okay. And we participate in one of the workshops. Part of the workshop is how to, take the exam. It's a discussion about the LEP exam and how to prepare. Then the second half is Steve and I, and we talk about CEUs once you're licensed and why it's required, what you need to do. So we're trying to get the word out there. We've also been working with the director of CASP to put information out in their newsletter reminding their licensees about the obligation to do CEUs.
Sure. But I guess more to my question, I'm wondering, would it make sense to just, maybe even for 1 year, increase the number of LEPs that you audit just to see if this is really
a problem,
50-50 issue? It may actually not be. This may be an outlier. And so I'm just wondering.
It just historically, Jonathan, unfortunately, it has not been an outlier. As a matter of fact, the fail rate is coming down.
Oh.
Which is, I mean, I don't, as a license holder, it's something that we have been, as Kim said, really emphasizing in newsletters, professional organizations. It's kind of puzzling to me why it's so hard. Peter?
Don't be puzzled. Statistically, it doesn't mean a darn thing. You have 8 and 7.
I know.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
And
You've done the chi-square test or something. This show is not significant.
We are a relatively small population, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like, I want to say 1,000, but I don't.
1341.
There you go. Active licensees.
Active licensees. And so we can tell them about the water, we can lead them to the water, we can point them to the water. I can't make them drink the water. So
what I'm hearing is, even if you pulled it up to 10% and did 130 of them, it probably was still the number.
My guess is yeah. My guess is yeah. Just based on the patterns that we're seeing. But
wondering about the invalid providers. Are these people who are doing sort of false advertising, or they made poor choices and they sought as a provider?
They could be, an invalid provider would be someone that's not approved under one of our approval agencies or one of our associations. It could be someone that was a former BBS provider still out there operating, and somebody takes a class and thinks it's going to be fine, and it's not.
And how do we support?
How do we support that?
No, how do we help our people know that they're no longer?
It's on the website where you can take on our website, right? If you take a course that is approved by any of those approval agencies, we'll take it. And the CEU provider is required to put that approval on their certificate, and they have to advertise it that way. So if I'm a licensee and I'm seeking out a course, if I don't see anything that's approved by, let's say, NASW, and it's not on the certificate, it's not in the advertisement, that would tell me I need to move on and find another one.
So before I go to if you get something in the mail, just for instance, and it clearly says on there BBS approved, I mean, do they have to go the extra step to then go online and verify? Or, I mean, if they have something that says BBS approved and can show that, I mean, is that a?
Well, BBS doesn't approve anything
Oh,
anymore.
Yeah, but it usually has some language that
It says accepted.
Accepted. Yeah, no, that was poor choice of words on my part, but
Well, I mean, I think that would warrant, for me, only because I know, I would look one step further and see who they're approved by. Are they approved by any of those entities that are an approval agency? So did CAMP approve them? Did NASW approve them? Because that also has to be on there.
see, I think that, I mean, that's hard. Okay, I'm going to go to.
I think I can help.
Good. Yeah.
So Vika, part of the issue is that the approval process changed 4 or 5 years ago. And I think the answer here is the same as the answer for the LEP problem. The people who are making those mistakes are the people who stay disconnected. They're not part of any community. They don't participate in conferences. They don't join organizations. They only do the minimum requirements. And we're not going to reach those people. The only way to reach them is when they get in trouble. So I highly doubt that somebody is putting up there. So I always go for things that are NBCC approved. I highly doubt somebody's putting that on there. Usually it says NBCC, AS, whatever. It has like a list of our usual anyway. It's not the false advertising so much as it is people not knowing that just because it comes up in your email, which we all get hundreds of emails, or it shows up in your mailbox, that it is approved. So, and again, I think it's people who are disconnected, who don't pay attention to anything, who get in trouble in all CEU ways.
So I'm very hopeful that in the sense that, because the board has been collecting emails, through the whole online renewal and stuff like that. I think, this is definitely a way to improve and to, reach out to those disconnected people.
Oh.
That's for sure. Yeah. So, so that's what I'm thinking. Well, they have to have an email to register for Breeze, so it means that, that I think, there are ways that, we can, reach out to those people, whether it's through, newsletter or what. But I think, the responding to what Leah said, the change of the continuing education law has been in place for a few years. I think, when we see that there are people still disconnected, it's very, very normal. So I would ask ourselves, is like, how can we, do some more outreach? And so I'm actually thinking that maybe, having like, instead of just reading the material, but really have, say like a video. A video, just to say, to delineate the requirements, and to remind the people that you have, BBS doesn't, approve classes anymore.
Right.
And I think that would be another effective way, for people to, instead of finding the regulations, but have a place and you have the email to, to let people know that this is your requirement. You want to watch the video, there you go. So hopefully, down the road that we can continue to spread the word and.
And to piggyback off of that, when somebody is newly licensed, is it in their letter? I can't remember, saying you need to take HIV?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Occasionally you need to read. I'm just saying.
Just to add an anecdote, I just got a word from our CE extraordinaire person up there that she just evaluated 3 LEPs and they all passed.
Yeah.
There you go.
So maybe the percentage will.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Steve.
I love it. Oh, she's
All right.
awesome. So that was the 2018 audit results. In 2019, our CE extraordinaire analyst focused mainly on LMFTs. So she's audited 59 of them, and the pass rate is 59%, 13% failed. The reasons are similar to the 2018 results, and she's going to be, as we just heard, she's focusing on the other licensees. So moving forward, outreach activity kind of decreased a little bit. It was national conferences and attended by staff and or myself, as well as the consortium meetings. I will tell you that our The first newsletter for 2019 is now available online. It's published. Has a lot of great information about the new laws and what we're doing. And as an aside, because I have been active at the national level with ASWB, they have asked me to serve on a committee. And I agreed. And this committee is going to review the method by which states contract to use the national exam. So I'm excited to serve on that.
Congratulations, Pam.
Thank you. So the move update. So yesterday you got to see the new suite in the construction phase. So we expect to be moving in sometime next week. Again, we're going to have separate file rooms for licensing and enforcement matters, a dedicated cashiering room, LED energy saving lights. Throughout the suite, we have a conference room for seating with 10 that's only going to be ours, a dedicated break room, and a larger front counter lobby area, which we intend to install a computer so that you can come into the office and renew online. Excuse me. And 2 separate entrances, one for public, one for employees. Excuse me.
Yeah. I just have just a quick question. What? I know this sounds so stupid, but why would someone come into the office only to renew online?
They waited till last minute. I need to give you my check now. I didn't get my renewal in the notice.
So they have to pay is the issue. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right now what happens is Steve takes his computer out there and they walk him through it. So we've got new flooring, new paint. The windows were treated with something to reduce the heat coming in. And all the electronics that stand for desks for staff have been ordered and will be installed. The expenditures we set aside, I think it was $445,000 for the project. We're going to come in just about that number, but we're excited. So, whew. Any questions? Thank you.
And there's room for expansion. Yep. So because seeing the number of the licensees increase, sooner or later, even though it's hard to get staff, but I think, in the long term, it's really important.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's good. Yeah, we'll have at least 10 spots available. That should carry us through for a while. Also in your packet are the pass-fail rates by school for the exams. So if there are any questions, I'll move on to the personnel update. We have some new employees. Martin Gomez joined us to fill the receptionist position. He was down here earlier. He was previously in the private sector, so this is his first state job. And he had 3 years of experience in customer service, so very happy to have him on board. Lisa Chong joined the board as a licensing evaluator to evaluate LMFT clinical exam applications. She previously worked at the Employment Development Department and the Department of Industrial Relations. We also promoted within Sam Hall. Many of you know Sam from prior board votes. We also noticed his shining skills, and so now he is working as an associate governmental program analyst, and he's joined Gina Beaver as what I call the NAG the DAG position. He's one of the individuals that works with the DAGs directly to monitor the cases. We had a retirement last year. One of our enforcement analysts investigating consumer complaints retired, Mary Hannafin. Her last day with us was December 31st. We have an upcoming retirement in that our licensing manager, Paula Gershon, her last day will be around the 15th of March. We currently have 4 vacancies. The examination manager, the halftime probation monitor, the vacancy created by Mary Hannafin's retirement, and the vacancy created by Sam's promotion. And recruitment efforts are underway, and we'll get those positions filled shortly. Some will be filled after the new fiscal year. But we've been holding off on that because I currently have no place to put these people. So that is the personnel report. And then finally, we'll move into the strategic plan update. It's here. Some of the new things that we've done, they've been updated. And if there's any questions on what's in that report, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have any question, but I want to point out that, since Dr. Brew was so happy yesterday, when she received that legislative pack, the book, the book. And so, so I want to happily point out that the 4.2 reorganize the statutes and regulations specific to each board, license type to improve understanding of application statutes and regulations. I think we can accomplish that.
So thank you. 'cause
Alrighty.
It's so
You like
much
the way-
easier to read, yes,
That's
to
it.
be able to find things, yeah.
Then we can make that done.
Yeah, well, no, it would
Yeah,
be
'cause
nice
I
if you
thought
could
you
do it
wanted-
online too. That you would put a tab at the top for each of the tabs that are in the book, and you
Oh.
could click that and just look at LMFT or click that and look
Oh,
at
I see how
LPCC.
we had it divided, the tabs.
Yes, if you can organize it online the exact same way, then it would be golden, unless you want to give me those books for the rest of eternity, which I'm happy to accept.
I know, we like that. That was a Roseanne creation.
Thank you, Roseanne.
You're welcome. We also, part of the reorganizing within the statutes, we did a lot of that with AB 93 because there was things in regs that we kind of thought should go in law. So we did a lot of reorganizing there. The statutes and regs book, usually we give you guys the taped copy, which can't have the tabs, so you probably got a bound copy. If anyone got one that didn't have the tabs and you want a spiral copy with the tabs, you can have it. It's just not as easy to travel. So just let me know.
Well, thank you. We're going to take a break. Oh, yeah, please.
Comment.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that when looking at the strategic plan, I'm really impressed that, number one, we're way ahead of schedule on a lot of these items. I mean, 2 years ahead of what we had projected when we did this plan. And I really appreciate you putting in every single time, even if it's multiplicity of events, that it doesn't just 2018, we met it, we're done. But you have 2018, we did this, 2019, we're still 2 years out, and 20, whatever it is. So I really appreciate that. And when I look at it as a board member, we can see without calling everybody, so have we done this, have we done that? I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, so as I was saying, we're going to take a 10-minute, 15-minute, 10, 15?
Yeah, unless they have
10 is fine.
Are there any comments about any of the items that we've just reviewed?
Your drug of choice.
Good, okay, then let's take a 10-minute break.
I want to go to sleep that fast, so it'll be the
I'm giving you all this information.
I can't wait to see
Oh,
that.
yeah, as you speak, I'm.
So Steve, you want to walk us through the update on the fee audit?
Yeah, it's kind of basically just a summary of what's occurred so far. August 2018, we started the contract with CPS HR Consulting, and we've been working with Chris Atkinson and Karen Connell to complete the report. And we just received the draft report in February. At this point, what we're going to be doing is we've reviewed the report, and I was pretty pleased with the product so far. And we're going to be consulting with them, though, to look at some of the content just to see, so we have the final report to present to you at the next board meeting. Basically what we did is we met with them, managers and staff, to assess kind of what the workload was currently with how the workload goes through our office and how much time is, they got really detailed about how much time is spent on each application and each function. They analyzed all the revenues that we collect and then determined if that fee, all those fees were sufficient to cover all those costs. It's real basic. I think that's not really the interesting part, is what they came up with. Basically, we're not going to have enough revenue in 2020 and 21, so that's where the gist of it. But some of the highlights I have there, they did the analyzing from fiscal year 14 and 15 on up. One of the reasons for that is because we had the exam restructure, we had Breeze. There was a lot of, it was hard to kind of, before the 14-15, some of the data was kind of unreliable. So they used those as a good starting point, 14, 15 and on. As you can see, we had, since that time, we've increased positions from 50 positions up to 60 positions now. So we have 10 more staff during that time. In 2013, we went to Breeze, and part of our costs, we had a lot of Breeze costs in the last few years. Luckily, with the transfer over to DCA, those Breeze costs will start to go down, but that had a major impact on our current fiscal standing. And of the 25 fees that they've evaluated, it's examination fees that were the highest of the revenue that we've been getting over the last few years. So we've 39.3% of our 39% of the examination fees over that period. It's increased 39%. Sorry, our revenue. Apologize. Beginning in 2021, revenue and expenses are going to be insufficient to cover our costs plus a 3 to 6 month reserve. And so when they were evaluating the costs and looking at projections, that's what they took into effect: is what would we have to actually charge in our fees to not only cover our expenses but have that 3 to 6 month reserve. Over the last 20 years, we have not raised a fee, so that's a very significant point. So after consultation, they came up with a fee of $120 per hour, absorbable fee. And what they did in making their recommendations to us is they took that $120 an hour and associated with the actual work time involved in each of the different types of applications, and kind of gave us a overall what they thought would be a good fee. I didn't want to put that out there yet until we have the formal report, because that's where the discussions are going to take place. Some of the suggestions are kind of, we want to make sure that it's feasible for everybody, but maintaining that, be able to get that revenue. Their final assumption, it assumes that basically in the draft report, they figured if we keep all our costs and expenses as the same and keep the initial licensing fees and the renewal fees the same, raise some other fees, that we should be, and the pro rata doesn't go too crazy, that we should be okay with their assumptions. What we're going to be doing is, like I said, looking at the draft report, working with Chris and Karen to make sure we're okay with the assumptions and the possible fee increases. And then the next step is actually planning and to figure out how we are going to, move forward on getting the regulations done. And also part of the process would be looking at the statutory limits and trying to increase those, so that in the future we have more flexibility in increasing the fees, because that's what, right now we're backed up against a lot of our statutory limits. So, yes.
A couple of questions. So when you did your analysis, did you find that the professions were pretty closely equitable in terms of cost, or are some licenses more expensive than the others to?
They're really equitable. The process really does not change, like the workload and the process between license types.
So it should be the same among all
Correct.
4 professions? Okay.
Correct. And I think that's one thing, I know personally I would be looking at, is we want to see making it that fee equitable, since, yes, the process is somewhat equitable.
Because it's not now.
Understandable.
As an LPCC. Excuse me.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you go. Okay. So will there be a strategy, to build up the reserve? Because 3 to 6 months reserve is pretty high. And so, if the fee audit is not, it's coming up, and it takes legislation to implement it. So, will there be a time, will we be running the risk time-wise, not being able to meet that expectation for 3 to 6 months reserve?
Well, I mean, the 3 to 6 month reserve is ideal. I mean, honestly, with the strategies we've already talked about, we will be able to increase the revenue. I think what I was looking at with the report, I think it was I think with the projections that were made and the recommendations that were made currently in the draft report, it was looking at trying to recuperate that 6-month reserve right away. So I think what I would open discussions with them, they have a better idea of looking at, recouping that 3 to 6, trying to get to that 6-month reserve over a longer period of time. So, but we'll be talking about that, the strategies, and that's what we'll present more when we get that final report to say, hey, this is what we're going to do. So.
Thanks. So my other question was, does it look at enforcement costs also? Because, we have those fees. Was that part of this process? Because that's different than renewal fees and.
Yeah, no, it does include enforcement costs.
Okay.
And the part of the discussion on looking at the workload, it was pretty intensive, more intensive than I thought we would go through. We sat down and it was basically task by task by task to look at that, including costs for enforcement and such.
So that's a cost that might also go up.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, thanks.
And the other thing kind of including in there, which stuff we don't really, we look at the workload process, some of the stuff as in, working the phones, doing the development website, and kind of looked at that and kind of got that involved in that price. So.
Thank you.
Since we haven't done this in 20 years, is that what you said? We haven't raised...
We haven't raised fees in 20 years. We actually reduced it for a short period of time because I think we had too much reserve back in the 90s.
So moving forward, so that we stay proactive instead of reactive, and then having to make big jumps when we could have done incremental, that if we were to approve something like this, to do projections of what to pay for the cost, because you should kind of know by the percentage of employees that are going up, the percentage of costs that you're trying to bear, that you should be able to prorate how much this is going to cost, so that even the licensees know that the cost of doing business, it could be predicted to be X, so that it's not at the end of the day we go, now we need to recoup costs.
Oh, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So perhaps when we roll all this out, we could have more of a holistic, futuristic kind of approach instead of just a one-time deal and then we wait for it to happen again.
Well, yeah, and this report's going to give us a 3 to 5 year projection on what they see is going to happen. And then on the other part of that, for what we're going to do with legislation and regulatory, that's what will raise the statutories, maximums to a point, so that we get caught in a situation where we can't do that. So that's what our raise the statutory limits and then work with regulation maybe. So yeah.
I'd like to just make a comment. I think it's fairly common among different regulating agencies. I know the city of LA had the same issue, albeit it's because of political pressure not to increase rates for the water and power. So that's why in 1 year they had to raise the rates by 18%, because they haven't raised the rates for over 10 years. So it's something where it's kind of like a classic feedback loop effect. If you delay it, you're going to have a massive bubble payment, toward the end.
Well, and then that's the thing, that's going to be the fun part is, trying to figure out, because we recognize, to really, if we wanted to recoup those fees, yes, the price that we would have to charge for some of the current, it would be, I could see we would get a lot of pushback. So it's kind of balancing that. But honestly, I think we didn't really do a survey, but our fees are very low compared to other licensed, regulatory agencies and stuff. Pretty low. So we are definitely going to take that into effect, especially, I think, really critical with the interns and registrants. The registrants, not interns anymore, registrants. So because we understand it costs a lot, and we don't want to make sure that we want to make sure that we can still operate, but at the same time not make it overburdensome on them.
We're extremely sensitive to that. extremely sensitive. I mean, because nobody likes the fees to go up anyway. So, but it's pretty obvious we can't sustain on the fees that we've got going on now. So, and I think that's one of the reasons that Steve and I were talking about, you know, the incremental steps, how, you know, slowly rolling it out perhaps and not doing that big push to get to the 6-month reserve immediately. What's it look like? You know, making progress towards it as opposed to just, here's your big elephant, let's eat it. So we'll see what happens. But we'll have a better plan for you in May.
Yeah, I want to definitely, encourage the board to, take active step to educate and prepare the licensees, because they, unfortunately, I think mental health professional is not really one of those high pay professions. So, anytime when they have, fee increase, especially, even for the intern, because they pay annually. And so, so I think that, whatever, the way to, to share with, the licensees and the registrant the need, that it's not something that we try to punish them. And, I think that is an, important message to send them ahead of time.
Oh, yeah, and we will definitely have enough ramp-up time, I believe, before we would be able to increase the fees as it is. So, yeah, that once again, the earlier communication, once we know, then yes, we'll definitely let them know.
I think the message that we haven't increased fees in 20 years is pretty compelling. I think that's, people are going to see that and go, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't think anyone's going to be thrilled that their fees are going up, but at the same time, it's 20 years. That's a nice long time. Nice long time. So, and we've been able to sustain that and add staff and increase our services. And, this is what it's going to take to maintain those services.
And the one thing, and the population. I mean, our population, we have increased by 10 staff over the last 5 years, but I mean, our population's been increasing 6% annually at least, so. Any other questions?
Any additional comments before we move off of this item? Any public comment? Okay, Roseanne, you want to walk us through the discussion and possible action from the Policy and Advocacy Committee?
Yes. So the first item to discuss is changes to the DCA produced publication called Professional Therapy Never Includes Sex. This brochure is licensees of this board and the psychology board and the medical board, if they have indication that one of their patients had sexual contact with a previous psychotherapist, they are required to distribute that brochure to their client. So last year, the psychology board noticed that the brochure was getting a little out of date, so we had some discussions, and they ran a bill, AB 2968, to make some updates to that brochure. Basically, AB 2968 required the 3 boards plus the osteopathic medical board was added to work together to update the content of the brochure. It included LEPs in the list of professionals who must provide the brochure if it's deemed needed. And it includes a new definition, a definition of sexual behavior in the provisions of the brochure to talk about inappropriate communication of a sexual nature due to things like online discussions and online texting becoming more prevalent. So the Board of Psychology has drafted updates to the brochure and has provided proposed language, which you can see in attachment A, to the other boards for review and comment. The draft shown here in your packet includes feedback from the board's Policy and Advocacy Committee meeting. We discussed it at their February 8th meeting earlier this month. And also they provided some feedback given by the medical board. So we want to just open up the contents of the brochure for discussion and see if the board has any further comments before we go ahead and send that back over to the psychology board for consideration.
It has social work trainees, and then the other ones are referred to interns. I thought we were calling everyone associates.
Where are you?
I'm looking at page 59, definition of terms.
Mhm.
We have trainees, social work trainees, and then we talk about marriage and family therapist trainees.
What's your question?
No, it's not a question. I just thought that we had a discussion that whether it was LPCCs or whatever, they were all called associates now.
So
Right.
trainees are in school. These are
Right.
students.
Okay, so, and then there's interns somewhere in here.
Right,
Are we doing
social work.
interns, psychological interns?
Line 120, it says social work interns, and should that say trainees?
No, that's what social workers call their trainees in the law. At the last Policy and Advocacy Committee, we discussed some feedback from CAMPT that trainees and MFT and PCC trainees and social work interns were not included in the list, and that could be a little bit misleading because somebody might be seeing one of those people. So what we did is the committee decided to have us add those 3 to the list, and then we included a footnote on the next page that basically says if you're seeing one of those types of individuals, that you should you should direct your complaint to either the school or the employer or the supervisor, because they're not under the jurisdiction of the board. That way they don't get the runaround when they try to contact the board, and then they're bounced around to the right place.
Okay. My bad.
Do we need a motion to approve that, Roseanne?
I don't think so, because the problem with this is that 3 other boards are going to look at it. So if we could improve it, but they still have the discretion
Okay.
to make further changes. So
All right.
So I just had a question. So again, if I'm a therapist, a client is telling me their therapist, who I know, had sex with them.
Mhm.
I only can hand them a brochure. I have no reporting duty.
Correct. Correct.
you're not required to. You can, you're not required to, but you're definitely required under the law to give them the brochure, and they can determine whether they want to move forward with that.
Because you're just hearsay.
Well,
That's why the client has to make the report, and you can't make it on their behalf.
unless you're in a public agency, you work for an agency, agency has requirements that any disclosures of, let's say the other therapist is in the same agency, right? And now this is the disclosure that the client is doing to you towards another person who works in the same place. That changes the dynamics. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page.
I think it too also depends on what license you hold. Like, we're not covered under this thing, but like in my license, if I know another therapist is doing something unethical, I'm required to report, required by law. So,
Yeah, we don't have anything in our laws that require our licensees to report unethical behavior. But I can tell you that we've had a couple of cases where there's been inappropriate conduct, and the client left, the licensee that was involved in that conduct and has gone to another licensee for services, and it's that second licensee that has worked with that client and encouraged that client to report. So then we get the information.
Right. I don't know. It depends on the agency and who the
Yeah.
therapist is working for, whether they'd be able to, because client confidentiality depends on how the laws for their agency and everything plays in, but they definitely have to give the brochure.
Yeah.
So just to ask again, if they're with a board approved, they're on probation and they're seeing a board approved supervisor, does that person have to report back to the board? Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So my understanding is when a person is on probation with us,
Right.
they're seeing a board-approved supervisor
Right.
in many cases. And if that supervisor becomes aware of a situation, do they need to report back to the board, this board?
Isn't that the purpose of the supervision?
Yeah, I would say we'd probably get that information in a quarterly report, or the supervisor will call and ask to discuss it with one of us. Okay. To see what their requirements are.
Any additional comment before we move on? Nope. Since we don't have to make a motion, let's go on to the next one. Looks like it is an amendment.
Yes.
Business and professional code.
So the next one is, it's a change that we want to make, and we've previously had the board consider this in August. However, when we went to draft the actual language, there was kind of some repetition that required some changes, and it's kind of on that line of whether is it substantive or not. So just to be safe, because we want to put it in a bill this year, we decided to bring it back to the board for approval. At the August board meeting, we discussed approving the addition of a new title for LMFT licensure, clinical mental health counseling with a concentration in marriage, family, and child counseling would be the new title. The reasoning for that has to do with portability to other states and KCREP standards. That title would allow a dual licensure path for LMFT and LPCC licensure that would also be recognized in other states. There's been some, with our accepted MFT titles right now, there's a problem sometimes if somebody gets a dual license here, there's a problem with the way that it's worded, that it's not always portable to other states. So it was suggested that we adopt this title. So the board did approve that title, but when we were drafting the language, we had to kind of tweak it a little bit. So now, if you look on page 79 of attachment A, the title would be either counseling or clinical mental health counseling, with an emphasis in either marriage, family, and child counseling or marriage and family therapy. So we had to kind of combine those with the either or. So it's pretty non-substantive in my opinion, but we just want to play it safe.
Any discussion or questions?
Thank you. Is that something that needs a motion?
It is. Do we have any public comment? Doesn't look like it. Leah, did you want to make a motion?
I would like to move to approve the language as written and direct staff to pursue legislation to make any non-substantive changes.
I'll second that.
Christina?
Discussion?
More discussion?
Alexander Kim?
Aye.
Amy Wong?
Yes.
Dr. Leah Baru?
Yes.
Deborah Brown? Betty Conley?
Yes.
Max Disposti? Yes. Dr. Christine Whitlisbach?
Yes.
Dr. Peter Chu?
Aye.
Lisa Stout?
Yes.
Jonathan Maddox?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so Roseanne, it looks like we have one more that's going to need some approval.
Yes, this is the bigger one for the day, and this is the regulations to implement AB 2138. So last year, you're probably well aware by now, AB 2138 made significant changes to the board's enforcement process. It has a delayed implementation date. It becomes effective on July 1, 2020. And it does a few different things with our enforcement process. It only permits a board to deny a license on grounds that an applicant has been convicted of a crime or subject to formal discipline if the conviction was within the past 7 years of the application and substantially related to the profession. But the 7-year limit doesn't apply to a serious felony conviction or to certain sex offenses that require registration. And then the other way that the board can deny is if the applicant has been subject to formal discipline by another licensing board within the past 7 years for substantially related professional misconduct. And it has to be professional misconduct that hasn't been dismissed or expunged under the law. AB 2138 also prohibits a board from requiring an applicant for licensure to disclose information about their criminal history. However, the board is permitted to request it to consider whether it is substantially related or to evaluate evidence of rehabilitation. The bill goes on to require the board to develop criteria to determine whether a crime is substantially related. That's currently in our regulations right now, but it's kind of vague. The bill requires it to be more specific. Things to be considered have to be the nature and gravity of the offense, the number of years elapsed since the offense, and how it relates to the natures and duties of the profession. And in addition to considering substantially related criteria, the board also cannot deny a license without considering evidence of rehabilitation. And then the bill goes on to require certain things to be done when determining rehabilitation. So a rehabilitation has to be considered if the person completed their criminal sentence without a violation of parole or probation, or if the board finds that its criteria for rehabilitation has been met otherwise. So because of the changes that the bill requires to substantial relationship definitions and evidence of rehabilitation, in order to implement AB 2138, we have to make some changes to our regulations. And those changes need to be done by July of 2020. And so we have made some changes to our substantial relationship and our criteria for rehabilitation definitions. For substantial relationship, we've included the 3 required criteria required by the bill. We've also added that substantially related crimes include, but are not limited to, certain acts that cover rebates, refunds, and discounts and false advertising that are in the general business and professions code, and then any violation of the board's specific practice code acts. So if we see any of those types of violations, we have to determine if it's substantially related or not. And then moving on, for the criteria for rehabilitation, we need to revise our regulations to expand upon how that is done. And for that, we were given pretty significant guidance from DCA Legal. And I know that in DCA Legal, when they were coming up with these criteria, they also consulted with the Attorney General's office as well as the Office of Administrative Law. In terms of other changes that you'll see in this packet here, we also had to make some revisions to the uniform standards related to substance abuse and disciplinary guidelines. That document is incorporated by reference into our regulations, and on page 38 of that document, it references the board's criteria for rehabilitation. Since we are updating these criteria, they're going to be out of date in that document, so they have to be, the document has to be amended. And I should note that because of that amendment that's required, we have to hold off on our enforcement process regulations that we were currently in the process of going through the initial pre-review process. And that's because you can't run regulations on a document, on the same document at the same time. So you can't be making 2 separate regulation changes. And we determined that the other regulation changes are substantive. So if there are any concerns about them, it would risk the changes to this document required here not being done in time, if hopefully that makes sense. So we have to run these regulations basically first. And then finally, there's a tweak in AB 2138 about references to required actions against registered sex offenses. So there's a kind of a definition of sex offenses we have to sort of change in there just so that it's consistent with what the bill says. And it's basically a reference back to section 290. And so we're doing that as well, and then making a couple of other reference changes as needed. So legal is still seeking a little bit of clarification about section 290. So there's a chance that there may be some changes to that down the road, but we're moving forward now as if this is the direction to move forward. The Policy and Advocacy Committee considered this language at its February 8th meeting and directed staff to bring this proposal to the board as for consideration as a regulation proposal. So we can turn it over for discussion.
Question, discussion? Leah?
So I know the purpose here is to evaluate the actual language, which isn't my strong point, but I want to make sure I understand what this bill is requiring, since we're going to be involved in the enforcement of it. So if somebody, say, has 10 criminal convictions, but they're all more than 7 years old, like they're 8 years old or older, then there's no process of evaluation on our part. I want to clarify.
Not unless they're defined as serious felonies, which there's a list of serious felonies in law and what those entail, or there's certain types of sex offenses.
Certain types of sex offenses.
So basically, there's like a sex offense that requires registration for a short period of time that's considered a misdemeanor. That wouldn't be allowed to be considered, but they're the more
The felony convictions
yeah,
where
the
they have
felony
to
conviction
permanently
ones it
register as a
allows.
sex offender. Yes,
Okay.
we could consider that.
Okay, good. That's good.
But the multiple drug offenses, DUIs, shoplifting, prior to 7 years, if they have nothing, if their last conviction is 7 years or older, nothing we can do.
So only if it reaches the level of felony.
Mhm.
Okay. And then
Serious
what about
Serious felony.
a serious felony? And then so if it was a serious felony and it got reduced because of XYZ, we don't consider it.
Nope.
Wow, that's scary. Okay,
Uh-huh.
thank you for the clarification. I think enforcement, I think a lot of people are going to end up. So what happens if DUI, let's use that as the most common thing. They have multiple DUIs, it's more than 7 years old, we don't do anything on it, and then they get a new DUI. Is that a new thing, or is it,
No.
it's brand new and we
New.
don't consider
Well, you
anything
could say-
prior?
You can consider the pattern.
Okay, so it wouldn't be unrealistic to say 5 years probation instead of 3 because there's a history of DUI
No, it would not.
conviction. Wow, okay, thank you.
I have a question, Roseanne. So, what was the need of the bill per se? So I need a little bit of background education. Perhaps you guys can help me. Is it to try to create more? Is there a gap that so far we have demonstrated? So that's why there is a need to implement this. What is the?
The need was cited as kind of to encourage people who have a past where they've had these crimes in their past, but they've rehabilitated and moved forward and gotten, ready to become licensed, to sort of reduce barriers to them to entering the workforce so that hopefully they are able to continue on and get a job and not reoffend.
Which I can totally agree with it. I'm just trying to figure out if there was a data analysis that shows that the current system is failing these people, or if there is any process that has created additional barrier in top of what the situation is. So I'm just trying to figure out what. Sometimes they say, if it's not broken, we don't fix it. So I'm trying to figure out what the gap is. If there was any analysis in the presentation of this bill that shows that disparity, so to speak.
I know they did some general analyses about criminal convictions and barriers to licensure when they were arguing for the bill. There was nothing done on a specific license board level, like for our licensees. And when the board opposed this bill, and when we raised those concerns about therapy, we definitely raised that, but it was kind of more of an effort on statewide. There were several bills that were kind of similar to this running last year, citing that sort of general evidence, and so they didn't consider it for this board in particular.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Roseanne, wouldn't you say it's a general political climate that is responding to significant barriers to people with criminal records, and especially in light of the changing drug laws? I think there's a
yes,
not just statewide, but even nationally, looking at some of the implications. And I think this may be part of that general movement. Jonathan, you had something.
No, I was just going to say, my guess is that this is a social justice equity issue aligned with what you're talking about, because many of those convictions do disproportionately impact poor people and people of color, and so black and brown communities. So I think it's a way to bring equity to the process and not deny people the capacity to care for themselves and take for their families and things like that.
Yes, that was cited heavily when we discussed the bill.
Right. And since just for the record, it's not that I'm questioning the need of it. I was just trying to find out if there was also any numbers available that can actually show that. Not that I'm questioning that it's not true, because I'm definitely understand that. Thank you.
I have a question. So is this bill actually asking us to also update the criteria for demonstrated rehabilitation and the crime, how a crime is substantially connected to the qualifications of a licensee? I mean, we have to do both of those things?
We have to update in regulations, we have spelled out substantial relationship criteria and criteria for considering rehabilitation. So they were both somewhat vague in the law. This bill actually put in specific things that the regulations need to say. So that's why we have to do that.
So I guess then the second question is that something that that the board and one of the committees will do, or is that something separate? Like how does?
It's here.
Yeah, no, what she was just referring to this is the link.
This is the language, yeah. So we brought it through the committee, but the board actually has to have the final approval before we can run it.
Thank you.
And so they're assuming that all licenses are equal. So if my medical doctor is 7 years and 1 month sober, who's going to be doing surgery on me? That's treated equal to, say, a real estate license, which is a little bit less scary for me if my real estate agent has a problem with alcohol.
You're right, it's a one-size-fits-all bill.
Okay,
So,
thank
but
you.
I hear the angst but.
It is what it is. We can't do anything about
Well,
it.
I will say that we worked really hard with legal to leave the board as much discretion as possible. The 7-year thing is something that we were looking at anyway, by and large. And the not naming everything out in terms of this is related, this is related, this is related, and then just referencing it back to our laws gives us a little bit of flexibility and discretion to make a determination whether it's substantially related or not, and allows us to really consider the rehab. So I'm okay with it. I mean, in an ideal world, it wouldn't have happened, but I'm all right with it. And I'm hearing in this current sunset review period, the question to the boards is, how is this affecting your programs? How many licenses are you actually being denied, or is this law applying to? And so far, not very many. I mean, I don't know that it's changed a lot of the denials. So I know we had data that we presented to the governor's office last spring, and were we less than 1% of all the apps? Do you recall?
I don't recall.
Yeah, it was a really low number. Really low number. So we'll make it work.
A little observation. Since we're doing this work, it will be really interesting to see also the impact of, which is something that we have seen, at least I've seen in the past few years by being on the board, how for a lot of people, they challenge even to come forward with their own wrongdoing and face the fees that, some of them are not even, most of them are not directed by us, but by the economy, that become extremely challenges, that they really, the impact of community of color, people that are poor, is extremely high. So that definitely will be something interesting to address. We have no power over that, but it's definitely an issue, because many of the cases that come to us are people that in generally had the resource, not necessarily the financial resources. We've seen a lot of people struggling extremely with that, but even to get to the point of filing, to do right what was wrong, it's really challenging from the financial standpoint of view. So since we're doing this work, it will be interesting to look into that part too, to see how we can reduce gaps and stuff like that. But anyway.
Yeah, as I think about my students, I can just say, wait a couple of years after you graduate before applying for your number, right? That'll make it easier for them to be able to get their associate number. Whenever you're done, I'm happy to make a motion.
So is there any public comment at this point?
Janley Wong, NASW. NASW has a special committee that's been working with the board on this. This committee has a variety of opinions. Some of them differ from the board's opinion or the board staff. Some of the considerations that come out regarding this regulation is this idea of discretion. So some of our committee members feel that if someone has completed probation, completed the terms of their legal rehabilitation, then they should be pretty much allowed to apply for and get a license. However, the difference is some feel that there should be an additional consideration. So the language, the statutory language allows some additional consideration. So there's a struggle here between has someone paid their debt to society and should they move forward, or do they get a second look? And could that second look trigger a denial? So that's our concern. It should be everybody's concern. It's a really difficult application of public policy to the bureaucratic licensure process. And we see that not just with this board, but throughout our system. And as someone identified earlier, Roseanne, this whole social justice issue, we're at a very sensitive time regarding this issue because we are seeing a massive criminal justice reform movement across the country, not just in California. And lots of people are questioning what can we do to help people that have been caught up in this system, some unjustly, and others rightly so, but they're ready to be rehabilitated and really ready to enter all kinds of occupations and professions, such as the one regulated by this board. So I just want to point that out to the board and let you know that these are the kind of discussions that are going on in the social work profession.
Thank you. There's no additional board comment. You can welcome a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the proposed text for a 45-day public comment period and delegate to the executive officer the authority to adopt the proposed regulatory changes if there are no adverse comments received during the public comment period.
I would like to second that.
Wait, I'm not done yet. To follow established procedures and processes in doing so, and also delegate to the executive officer the authority to make any technical or non-substantive changes that may be required in completing the rulemaking file.
Now I can second that.
Any additional comment? Christina?
Okay. Jonathan Maddox? Yes. Becca Stout? Dr. Peter Chu?
Aye.
Dr. Christine Whitliswalk?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Betty Conley?
Yes.
Deborah Brown? Yes. Dr. Leah Brew?
Yes.
Christina Wong?
Yes.
Alexander Kim?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Roseanne, do we have an update on board-sponsored legislation?
Yes, we do. So for the legislative update, the board is pursuing 3 legislative proposals this year. The first one is SB 679. The author for that bill is Senator Bates, and that's the license portability to California bill, trying to ease some of the barriers for licensees trying to come into this state who have been long-term licensees in another state. So that bill has been introduced. You're going to see it be amended in about a month. There's going to be some minor technical amendments based on some drafting changes Ledge Council made that weren't quite correct, but we'll get there. So that's that bill. The second bill that we're sponsoring is AB 630, and the author of that is Assemblymember Arambula. And this bill is the bill requiring psychotherapists who are both in exempt and non-exempt settings to require notices to clients prior to performing therapy about how to provide a complaint about the therapist. So they actually have to provide a written notice. So that bill was recently introduced as well. And then the third bill, there's not a bill number for it yet. That'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. That should be available. And that's our omnibus bill, which makes minor technical and non-substantive changes to the law. And that's it.
Wow. Yeah.
When it says all settings, are we talking about exempt settings?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Kim, Roseanne, update on board rulemaking?
I'll do it. So we are currently pursuing several rulemaking packages. The first one, though, I mentioned earlier, the enforcement process regulations, which we had just gotten through agency. This is the changes to the uniform standards to and disciplinary guidelines. That bill that had been moving along in the pre-review since July 17. However, now that we have to do the 2138 regulations, we have to put this one on hold because we absolutely have to get the 2138 regulations in place by July 2020. So that one's on hold right now. The other one, the exam rescoring application abandonment and APCC subsequent registration fees, that I'm happy to announce is actually through the DCA initial review process now. Christy has just noticed it, so it has been begun its 45-day public comment period. The public comment period began on February 22nd, and then it ends in April. The public hearing is on April 8th of 2019 for that. And then we have our supervision proposal. This is the proposal that the regulations follow AB 93, and it makes some additional changes in regulations to the qualifications to become a supervisor and the forms and additional coursework supervisors have to take. The board approved the language in November of 2016. We had to wait till AB 93 passed. AB 93 has now passed, so staff is currently preparing the documents to begin the initial review process. And we are also planning to roll up into that reg package some other language that the board approved at its November 2018 meeting back a few months ago. That addresses registered employment by temporary staffing agencies. It fits nicely with the supervision language, so we're just going to roll those two up into one and run with it. So that's our reg update.
Any comments? Thank you, Roseanne. So we are at public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda?
So when I first moved here in November, I have several colleagues that live in California that are MFTs and MSWs, and they said, oh yeah, the board is super tough here, so good luck. So I moved here from New York, and there was a lot of paperwork going back and forth, and I just picked up the phone and called and talked to Kim Madsen, and instead of this scary bureaucratic person, I got a real live human being on the phone that was very nice and compassionate. And she told me about this meeting today, and so here I am, and I've learned so much here. All the different things that you do, all the different monies that are allocated, and just your consideration based in reality with all the different people that you oversee. So I had this great practice in Manhattan. I'm a sex therapist and a sex addiction therapist, certified couples, all the really tough stuff. And then I had a grandson that was born a year ago. So that's why I decided to move here. And I'm really happy to start working here as soon as possible. So the portability law really matters to me. And I'm really appreciative that I don't even have to come up here and make my case, that you all realize this, because I'm the kind of therapist other therapists refer to, because frankly, they don't like doing some of the stuff that I do. So, so thank you for, easing the way for somebody like me. And that, I guess the word, I was talking to Leah earlier, and I couldn't think of the word, I don't know what was going on, but the word is seamless and streamlined, and that's what I expect from California. That's always been my vision of California, just a very forward-thinking state. And I'm so happy to be here, and just thank you all so much. And let's see if I got everything down here. Yeah, New York is also very forward-thinking, so I'm glad that both these states that I hope to be licensed in, we're all on the same way of thinking. So thank you, and I've learned so much, and you're no longer this scary board. Each of you, Deborah, I met you in the parking lot. Leah, we spoke, introduced to you two. Jonathan came over. I want to make sure I got everybody here. Just thank you so much. This has been eye-opening for me. And on Yelp, where there's several not so great comments about you all, I plan on making some good comments after today. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
What a great note to end.
Yeah, no kidding.
Microphone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've never really talked into a microphone, so I just want to make sure I'm doing it right. Hi, I'm Megan Bailey. I am an associate clinical social worker. I currently work in San Francisco. I work for a private organization called the Lotus Collaborative. We serve those primarily struggling with eating disorders. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about AB 93. In particular, the Business and Professional Code section 4996.23.3, that an ACSW may not be supervised by an outside clinical supervisor unless the corporation is both nonprofit and charitable. That is really significantly impacting my life right now. I got this job last July. It was about July 5th, and this regulation went into effect in January 1st. So what I'm really here to ask for is that I be grandfathered in under the understanding that when I took this job, this regulation did not exist. I have about 900 hours left for my licensure, and they all need to be supervised by an LCSW. Let's see, we're not a nonprofit or charitable organization, but that's actually part of what I'm really hoping to accomplish as an LCSW. I have recovered from an eating disorder myself, and these are very underserved people that I work with. These disorders primarily impact women. They actually impact all socioeconomic statuses, although they're generally not thought of that way. They impact all ethnicities fairly equally. And so I feel like it's a huge problem in terms of who accesses treatment. While it seems like everybody's getting these disorders, upper middle class white women are generally who access treatment. And so by me being able to become a specialist using my supervision training in this job, I feel like I'm going to be able to really be of service to this community for the next 30 years plus. However, if I have to leave this job prematurely, I feel like it's really going to set me back in terms of the amount of supervision and experience I'm able to get. So I'm really here just to ask the board if there is any way for me to be grandfathered in, or if there's any next steps I can take, anything at all I can do. I'm here from San Francisco. I can come back, no problem. So anyways, I know that you guys don't respond today necessarily, but just if there's anyone I can meet with after. Or...
Right, so the board can't engage with you right now, but we can put you in touch with some staff members to get you some more information offline and to assist you.
Okay, great. And I believe there's a next meeting?
Yes, there is a next meeting in May, and I think you're the one that sent me the email.
Yes.
Okay, I'll respond, I promise.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all of your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Do we have suggestions for future agenda items?
Sorry, I am used to talking to microphones. I'm just curious where the conversation is about LEPs being able to supervise other licensees under the BBS sort of umbrella, and so I'm just curious. Oh.
Yep, I can answer that. It was introduced as a bill last week. CASP is the sponsor of it. So we will be talking about that at the April Policy and Advocacy Committee, and then again in May. Was a little bit, we spoke with them about discussing it today. It's a little early yet. They're still trying to sort some things out, so we'll be having that discussion in April and May.
All right, then in that case, if there is no further comment, we will adjourn at 2:47.